West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Let's kick it off. It's 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. We've got an absolutely jam-packed show for you today. Jon Decker, White House correspondent, is going to give us the latest on Pete Hegseth. What is happening with this signal controversy? And is the president going to continue to stand by him? Or is he looking for another Secretary of Defense? Conflicting reports coming this morning. We'll get into that in the 6 o'clock hour. 7 o'clock hour, Natalie Chuck's going to join us. Denver7 Investigative Reporter. This is a fascinating story of this guy that has basically found a loophole to where he has been charged and arrested on assault, on public intoxication. He even hit somebody. This is all separate cases, by the way. Ran a car into a guy, or into a family, killed the mom and the grandma, and walks, all because a state doctor finds him incapable of standing trial. There's a loophole, and it results from a law that was passed in 2024. There is a guy on the street walking around today in Denver, Colorado, that killed 2 people while driving drunk and stoned, and it's all because of this legal loophole. Fascinating case. Denver7 did some great investigative reporting on that. We'll get into that in the 7 o'clock hour. 8 o'clock hour, we're going to take the show up a big notch, Bill. We're going to hang out with a former U.S. ambassador to the Vatican.
Yeah. That's amazing. We're going to have to ask him where all the gold is buried.
Yeah, this guy is one of the best that Colorado's ever produced. Secretary Jim Nicholson, former ambassador to the Vatican, former Secretary of Veterans Affairs, is going to join us to give us his reflection on Pope Francis and who could be the next pope. And then Democrats going after hidden fees, but not the taxes you have to pay. We'll get into that in the 9 o'clock hour. So, lots to cover today, but now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, 40. Just a gorgeous morning in Denver. Today is Earth Day. Thank you, God, for creating the earth. Expecting a high of 72 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, a woman has been arrested after the deadly weekend stabbing in Wheat Ridge. Officers were called to the 3900 block of Sheridan Boulevard on Sunday. Witnesses said 2 women were involved in a fight before one of them pulled out a knife and stabbed the other. They found and arrested 47-year-old Imani Tate shortly after the stabbing. The unidentified victim died after she was taken to the hospital. Tate could be charged with second-degree murder and violating a protection order. A teenage girl is dead after falling through an attic in Pueblo. Police say it happened on Friday. Joy Lynn McDonald was at an after-school program at the Rocky Mountain Service Employment and Redevelopment Empowerment Center. Police are treating it as an accident. No other information has been released. The funeral for Pope Francis will be Saturday, and DJT said that he and the First Lady will be in attendance. Inevitable West on X says that Catholics worldwide are now demanding Bishop Athanasius Schneider replace Pope Francis. He gets it. There's an attack on Christianity in the West.
This is very serious. Now we are witnessing an invasion They are not refugees. No, this is an invasion of mass Islamization of Europe, which already went on for at minimum 50, 60 years, the Islamization in Europe. But now it is in mass. It is very evident. And so this is a global political agenda by the powerful of the world to destroy Europe culturally and religiously. I mean, to destroy Christianity ultimately in Europe.
The White House says there are no plans to replace Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. A White House X account posted wrong fake news in response to an NPR story that said the White House was in the process of looking for a new leader at the Pentagon. Another reason taxpayers should maybe never pay a penny to NPR. Do it on your own, NPR. But we'll see conflicting reports. The warmongers in D.C., they want war, and who want war? They make a lot of money at it, attacking Hegseth. Stay tuned. A lot will happen today. Sheriff Jeffrey Gall in Maryland, who knows all about Kilmar Garcia, says, yes, your friendly neighbor is MS-13.
Have you seen these tattoos, Sheriff?
I've seen the tattoos, I've seen the pictures, I've seen the clothing, I've seen the reports of law enforcement and confidential informants stepping forward and confirming not only his place within the gang, but what some of the things that he is accused of doing in order to have the name that he had. I don't have those reports directly in front of me, but I've reviewed those reports as we've dug deeper into this issue and the visit to El Salvador again, and just how just tone deaf it is to go visit this individual in El Salvador.
Senator Ron Johnson drops a bombshell on Benny Johnson, says possible hearings coming, trying to get to the bottom of 9/11.
Well, start with Building 7. Again, I don't know that you can find structural engineers other than the ones that had the corrupt investigation inside NIST that would say that thing didn't come down in any other way than a controlled demolition. I mean, you just look at that. You talk about molten steel. Again, you listen to the documentary Bravo 7. There's an awful lot of questions. Who ordered the removal and then destruction of all that evidence? Totally contrary to any other firefighting investigation procedures. I mean, who ordered that? Who was in charge? I think there's some basic information. Where's all the documentation from the NIST investigation? There are a host of questions that I want, and I will be asking, quite honestly, now that my eyes have been opened up. I've talked to former Congressman Kurt Weldon now. I will work with him to expose what he's willing to expose as well.
And Jeff, with another great interview, this one with a father, a victim of our state's satanic government, lost custody of his daughter. He didn't affirm her gender, fighting against 1312.
I can't refer to my daughter as my daughter. I think that's some kind of strange, sinister fascism that came out of left field. I don't approve, and I'm indignant about it, but I'm still living gracefully.
You can see it. That was amazing, Jeff.
That was, well, thank you, brother, for playing that. I appreciate that. And that was an interview we did down at this rally on Thursday of last week against House Bill 1312, which would put this type of action really into law. But basically what the father's saying is it's already happening, is that you run up against a system, whether it's the guardian ad litem, the judge, the counselors, the entire system is set up right now to where if you are in a custody dispute and you do not believe in transgenderism for your child, then you're going to pay a penalty. You're going to lose time with your child. And he hasn't seen his daughter in 2 years.
God, I couldn't believe that. I hadn't seen that yet, and it's just amazing. We can't remind people enough. It's horrible. I mean,
real life consequences to this stuff.
Yep. Total hell.
Well, and the life lesson here is marry somebody that shares your values.
Boy, that's the truth.
I mean, either side.
Yeah,
either
absolutely.
Side. Marry somebody who shares your values.
Absolutely.
That
should be number one, man, not their eyes, not the color of their eyes. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything. Fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at LairFireplacePatio.com.
Three-point game. Here come the Nuggets.
Think about taking a foul here.
Brown passes up a three. Now he fires. Missed it badly. Jokic with a rebound. Clock ticks to 2. Jokic, no. And that is it.
Nuggets ran out of gas. Nuggets Clippers game 2 opening round. Jokic with a triple-double, but he did have 7 turnovers. Game 3 moves to L.A. tied at 1 as the Nuggets fall to the Clippers. Stanley Cup playoffs. Avalanche Stars in overtime, tied at 3.
Here's Colin Blackwell going at Johnson. Blackwell into the slot, shoots. Save made through traffic by Blackwood. Blackwell scores! It's over! This series is tied!
Stars win and tie the series at 1. They come back to beat the Avalanche. They'll come back here to Colorado as the Avs try to up it to 2-1. But how about that? Blackwell scores on Blackwood. Blackwood. Man, what are the chances of that happening? 37 in Lafayette, 38 in Littleton, 40 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Tuesday morning.
I'm doing backflips over this. I am so excited.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Your KNUS forecast for the Denver metro area calls for a very pleasant Tuesday. We'll be looking at temperatures today and again tomorrow, and also for your Thursday running a little above average. We'll see temperatures lower to maybe a mid-70 for highs. Some morning sunshine, little building afternoon cloud cover. A couple of showers and storms not out of the question today. A better chance of some showers and a few spring thunderstorms Wednesday and Thursday. Lows tonight and the next few nights, low to mid-40s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, NPR reporting. The White House has begun the process of looking for a new leader at the Pentagon to replace Pete Hegseth, according to a U.S. official who is not authorized to speak publicly, of course. This comes as Hegseth is again mired in controversy over sharing military operational details in a group chat. The defense secretary is under fire after revelations that he shared classified information in a group chat with his wife, brother, and lawyer, according to the official. The source says Hegseth used a signal messaging app on his personal smartphone detailing minute-by-minute classified information about a airstrike on Houthi targets in Yemen. It happened at about the same time in March that Hegseth shared similar details with top White House officials in a different signal chat group that accidentally included a journalist. That leak, hours before airstrikes hit, could have endangered U.S. pilots if that information about the timing of strikes was intercepted by U.S. adversaries. Already, the Houthis have twice shot down American Predator drones. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt denied that there's an effort to replace Hegseth, pointing out on X that President Trump stands strongly behind him. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump backed Hegseth and said concerns over the signal chats are a, quote, waste of time. He's doing a great job. Ask the Houthis how he's doing, Trump said. Hegseth had denied wrongdoing at a White House Easter event earlier on Monday. This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people, ruin their reputation. It's not going to work with me. Hegseth was likely referring to 4 senior advisors who left the Pentagon abruptly last week. So they leave last week, and then all of a sudden this news story comes out today, or this week. Former Defense Department spokesperson John Oloit resigned and then published an opinion piece calling the past month at the Pentagon a, quote, full-blown meltdown of infighting that is hurting President Trump. Question to Bill Thorpe. Question to our great listeners. By the way, phone lines are open 303-696-1971. Or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. My question to my esteemed colleague, is this just a bunch of hooey? That, this happened. We already know that he used Signal. He probably learned from his lesson. Move on. This is just disgruntled employees. Or is this indicative of bigger leadership problems in the Pentagon? And while Donald Trump may be hedging right now, eventually he's going to replace Pete Hegseth. Your thoughts, sir?
For me, this is just a reinforcement of incompetence. That's basically what it is that I was talking about it beforehand, that I felt he wasn't qualified and was incompetent and unprepared for the job. And this seems to reinforce that narrative, because this is a second Signal chat, not the one that Goldberg was included on. This is a second one in which it's his brother, his lawyer, and his wife. That's shocking. And it seems to be a Signal chat that he set it up.
There were other ones.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are more ones. And so the idea, if this seems to be the pattern of behavior, and again, Donald Trump wants him in charge, put him in charge. I'm not going to sit here and call, he must be removed. I'm not going to be like Republican Don Bacon of Nebraska, who's already calling for Hegseth to be removed.
Or Jason Crow.
Yeah. But again, you expect it from the Democrats.
Tweet that on a daily basis.
But you expect that from the Democrats. What's interesting is when the Republicans start making noise, because that's where you can see some support erode. However, Caroline Leavitt did give what is considered to be the kiss of death. We are firmly supportive behind him. How many times do you see a general manager come out and go, we support the coach. The coach is absolutely, and then 2 weeks later, the coach is gone. I'm not saying Hegseth is going to be gone, but one of the worst things you can hear in any situation like this is he has the full support of the head of the office. That's scary. There's so many other things they could say that would make you feel much better. But I don't think he's going to be gone because loyalty. He is very, very loyal to Donald Trump, and that's what Donald Trump prizes over everything else. In fact, I would submit Donald Trump prizes loyalty above competency and ability to actually do the job. He's more connected to people that are loyal than people that can effectively carry out what he needs to be done. But he's in charge, so choose whatever you want. The thing for me that we should be shocked at is if I'm concerned about our Defense Department, if I'm concerned about our international security, things like that evidently you don't have to hack into DOD computers or anything. You just got to steal Hegseth's brother's phone. That's all you need. You steal Hegseth's brother's phone or clone it, you're getting Signal chats. You're getting updates on U.S. military operations that are not public and should be discussed through classified channels. That's what head of the CIA had said. So this is not stuff that is classified information, but the information that is transmitted should be transmitted through classified channels. And that's different than what Hegseth is doing. So if you think that an operative from Iran or China should be able to get their hands on Hegseth's lawyer's phone and then get information about the DOD, great. Or maybe they just hang around in a restaurant and steal Kristi Noem's purse. That'd be the other thing. So I got big questions about that one too. That's a side question.
$3,000 in cash.
Yeah. What the hell was she doing with $3,000 in cash? But the other part is, where's the Secret Service? Aren't they? Again, this is the issue that I've got is, again, just with a restaurant story. Where's the Secret Service? How did anyone get that close to Kristi's purse and be able to walk away with it without the Secret Service knowing? Even if they were protecting the principal, meaning Kristi, why do they leave the handbag behind? That's operational failure in my mind, that you just don't do that. So how does that possibly happen? But this is where we are. And
now,
so, Phil,
Phil,
we'll see.
Pete Hegseth's brother is a guy named Phil Hegseth.
Yeah.
He's a senior advisor to the Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security and liaison officer to the Department of Defense. So he does work there. He's an employed. He's not just kind of like, it's not like Hunter Biden.
But how many employees were briefed or got information about strikes that were done? My guess is less than 1/2 of 1/2 of 1/2 of 1%. And does Pete's brother rise to that level of information? No, I don't think so. And more than that, his lawyer and his wife. So again, you're saying all I need to do is dupe his wife's phone, and now I get Department of Defense information? That seems questionable. If you're worried about our adversaries coming into the U.S. and getting information, we were scared to death with the Chinese buying land near military bases and peeping. We were scared to death. They don't have to do that. According to this, all they got to do is get Mrs. Hegseth's phone. That's it. And then they can get a whole bunch of information. This is fascinating. But is he going to be fired? No, not this week, not next week.
Do you think, though, that if someone was Joe Biden's wife's name? I already forgot. Jill. They got Jill Biden's phone? Did they get access to classified information?
No, not at this level, because I don't believe that Jill Biden was included in any classified conversations or information. Do I think she probably knew stuff that she shouldn't? Yeah, probably. But do I think that she had it on an unsecured phone? Do I think that she was included by Joe Biden or anybody else on this type of an unsecured chat about what military strikes are going to be taking place, where and when? No, probably not. So that's kind of the issue that I've got is if we found out, if it was the Biden administration, you found out that anybody was being this lax with security, probably a lot of people that would have their hair on fire, screaming about how could you possibly be this unsecure? What about Iran? What about China? What about Russia? They'll know all this stuff. That's where we are at this one. But the part for me is the people that aren't even necessarily part of the government. Pete's personal lawyer.
Pete's doing the rounds now. It looks like he's
he's got to do damage control. So he's got to just say.
How much do you put this under the category? And what the reason I bring this up is because it seems to be an allegation running through at least conservative social media circles right now that this is retribution of a military-industrial complex that doesn't want to be changed, trying to take out the change agent itself.
I don't know, because, and here's the issue, is that, isn't it, I mean, aren't the Republicans the super pro Defense Department people? If you had to have, Republican or Democrat, my guess is the military-industrial complex wants more Republicans. It was Donald Trump who said he was going to.
Definitely under the Bush years.
But just in
Things
general.
have changed on that.
I would say just in general. No, Donald Trump was promising to rebuild our broken military. According to Donald Trump, Joe Biden had decimated the military, and so had Obama, that we were in tatters. We couldn't possibly be the strongest military on the planet, according to what Donald Trump was saying on the campaign trail. So his issue was he was going to rebuild the military and make it stronger and better and bestester than before.
Get the DEI stuff out of it.
But again, it was the idea that he said it was destroyed. So, I mean, who's that group? It's the Republicans. So that is a narrative that in my mind, the conservatives are floating because they don't want to deal with the actual issue. Because what they're doing is they're obfuscating. They're not addressing in any way, shape, or form Hegseth's behavior. What they're doing is saying, oh, well, this is just other people being mad about stuff. Okay? Even if it is military contractors and stuff being mad about changes Hegseth is making, is it still okay what Hegseth is doing? Is the behavior,
right? Like this happened
okay?
Around the exact same time that the other one did, and can you just chalk it up to a rookie mistake? This was March of the very first few months of the administration. I'm guessing he doesn't want this headache anymore, so he stopped doing this, which is important. But
does he need to though? Because if it's the military-industrial complex, or as Hegseth said on Easter morning, and probably what he's saying in the interview this morning is, this is just media, and they're doing the Russia hoax, and this is all blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So does he need
Much
to change his
ado about
behavior?
nothing.
Yeah. Does he need to change his behavior? If he
I'm
is
guessing
not,
if he doesn't want to deal with this headache, yeah.
But he doesn't think he did anything wrong. So that's the issue. Is that if he doesn't think he did anything wrong and he's not taking any responsibility for it, then he doesn't have to change his behavior at all, because it's everybody else's issue.
Avoid this problem, constantly having to deal with media blowing this stuff out of proportion.
Yeah, we'll see. That's I'm not certain that he's wired that way. And the idea being, rookie mistakes, I'm sorry. I'm of the opinion that the Secretary of Defense doesn't get to make rookie mistakes like this.
But
that
Bill,
has
at
to be
the
far
same
beyond
time,
that.
you have a military that resulted in 13 soldiers being killed in Afghanistan, and literally nobody paid for that.
Was
so,
the information
you want to
about
talk about
Afghanistan
mistakes? There's really big mistakes that actually cost lives of American soldiers that no one paid punishment. And in this case, you have signal chats with his wife that's making headlines.
Again, I'm okay with the idea of holding Lloyd Austin or anybody else in the Department of Defense liable or just responsible for what happened at Abbey Gate. That's fair. And that can be on the administration not holding anybody responsible. But then again, are we saying, well, the Biden administration didn't hold anybody responsible, for the Trump administration shouldn't hold anybody responsible?
I think you're pointing out, like what I'm pointing out is that the media is raking Pete Hegseth over the coals regarding signal chats, while guys, for instance, Jason Crow, calling for his resignation. This must not stand.
That's politics.
And then his party results in the death of 13 U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. You didn't hear a peep from him.
Not from the Democrats, but you heard a lot from the Republicans. The people that are silent now about Hegseth.
And the media.
But media did criticize Biden to a certain point, not necessarily as much, but there is some partisanship there. But the Republicans that are supporting Hegseth were screaming for Lloyd Austin's head and other people. So they were screaming that everybody had to be held responsible. So basically, we're just everybody's screaming the same thing. We're just switching parties at this point. So yes, it's political. It's absolutely political at this point. And again, if the Secretary of Defense under Biden or Obama had done rookie mistakes like sharing strategic information on Signal, that'd be an issue. However, I would submit that if some of this information got out and led to the death of one or two Air Force pilots, the Republicans wouldn't want Hegseth to leave. They wouldn't want him at all.
I would.
No. Oh, you might. Yeah. You might. But the politicians, the people in charge, the White House, no, not at all. They would reinforce behind him.
That's a good question. That is a really good question. I think they would. But let's open it up. Phone lines are open. 303-696-1971. Should Pete Hegseth resign? Does this give you a pause about his quality of leadership? And that he needs to go and that he's clearly not qualified for this job? Or is this much ado about nothing? The media driving up and dredging up, inconsequential issues in order to get headlines to try to force out a guy that's bringing real change to the military. Phone lines open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Campos Law text line at 720-819-5115. Well, Bill and I debate a lot of things. There's some things we don't debate. Advanced hair restoration. If you're losing your hair and you need a simple solution that works, you want the best, and the best. Now 2 years in a row voted by Westward Magazine best hair replacement company. That's Advanced Hair Restoration. Modern technology with top-rated physicians, something that's guaranteed to work. Guys, you need Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. They've completely redefined hair restoration, from the experience itself to their unmatched results. If you got receding hairline, bald spot, or thinning hair, address them all with Advanced Hair's simple one-day treatment in a calm, relaxed environment with the most experienced professionals. Advanced Hair has performed tens of thousands of these breakthrough treatments, and get this, your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day. No one in Denver can offer anything like the Advanced FUE found at Advanced Hair, and I highly recommend their team. It starts with your free consultation. Call 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you'll also get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. So refine your hairline with the team that's redefined hair restoration. 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. I'm going to talk to you about a company that's not going to give you the runaround. Huh? See the Blues Traveler Rossins there? Yeah, see how that is? Yeah, okay. Anyway. Also, Blues Traveler July 4th Red Rocks. Absolutely fantastic.
Is he July 4th?
Yeah.
Dude, that guy, is he still as big as he used to be?
No, he's much thinner. He went on a diet because I actually have a T-shirt for a Blues Traveler concert that never happened because he suffered a heart attack with his girlfriend in Hawaii in a hot tub, and they canceled the July 4th show. He couldn't travel or do anything like that.
Gosh,
but yeah, since
so
then,
talented.
he lost a ton of weight. You wouldn't recognize him. Yeah, you wouldn't recognize John Popper at all. Yeah, so it's really neat.
Googling John Popper.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So, yes. But I want to talk to you about Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Reach out to them at coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com, because what you think isn't a big deal can turn into a very big deal. A small cut, an open sore, it's torn skin tissue. It'll eventually heal, right? What's the worst that can happen? I don't know. How about amputation or death? Yes, and I'm being real. And that's why you need to reach out to Wound Care Associates of Colorado if you have a slow-healing cut, a diabetic ulcer, or a pressure sore. Jennifer Walker, who founded Wound Care Associates of Colorado, made a vow that nobody else was going to have to go through what she did in her own family because her uncle had some comorbidities, diabetes, neuropathy, and he developed a small cut on his toe. He ignored the cut because he had, admittedly, better and bigger things to deal with, his medical conditions and some other stuff in life. But ignoring that small cut on his toe turned into a very big deal because it became infected. By the time he sought medical care, it had really progressed to the point they had to amputate part of his foot. But that wasn't the end of the story. It turned tragic. Just a short time later, Jennifer's uncle passed away from the infection, not from the original comorbidities that he was focused on at the time. So ignoring the problem certainly didn't fix the problem, did it? coloradowound.com. coloradowound.com is how you need to contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado. If anybody in your family is dealing with a slow-healing cut, diabetic ulcer, pressure sore, I did it because of an issue in my own family. I trust them. You can trust them too. And this is why it's cool. When you contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado at coloradowound.com, they will promote better healing outcomes, meaning they want to close that open skin and tissue so the dirt, germs, and bacteria don't get inside. It would have really made a difference for Jennifer's uncle, and we want to make sure it makes a difference in your family's lives as well. But the really cool part is they go old school. It's concierge service, but not the concierge price. They bring house calls back in form. Yeah, you contact them at coloradowound.com. Their wound-certified nurse practitioner comes to your location and sets up a private treatment plan just for you in the comfort, privacy, and convenience of your own home. Yeah, you may have to transport a loved one. You may have to take time out of your day to go to a doctor's office. No more. You schedule with them, and they come to where you are and provide all the treatment at your convenience. Come on. What other doctor's offices out there put you first to that level? Nobody. That's the answer. That's why you got to reach out to Wound Care Associates of Colorado if anybody in your family is dealing with a slow-healing cut, a diabetic ulcer, pressure sore. Wound Care Associates of Colorado. I trust them. They're working with my family. You can trust them too. coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com, and tell me you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show. Back to you, Jeff.
I've been reading about John Popper since you talked about that. He's a libertarian.
Yeah,
you know he owns a cannon.
Yeah,
and left New Jersey because of the restrictive gun laws.
Yes. Oh, he's fantastic. He's kind of he's a fun guy. He's absolutely wonderful. Yeah,
libertarians are fun.
Oh yeah, and this is on a side note. I have one of the first ever Blues Traveler concert T-shirts still at home in my closet. I've got about 4 Blues Traveler concert T-shirts, and I've got one of the first ones ever, and it had the old rig where you had the belts that look like you have the harmonicas on it.
The harmonicas on it.
That is it. The very first time they toured, that was the first concert T-shirt that they came for this part of the country. So I've still got that in my there.
We're talking Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, and is Trump going to stand by him? Text messages coming in on this one, 7061. Drunk people shouldn't text. Trump needs to fire him. Well, there's no evidence that he is drinking on the job at this point, but did have a problem with that in the past. Jason in Denver, most NFL football teams love to face a rookie quarterback. So does our military adversaries.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Is that a good point? I mean, he does 2 Bronze Stars. He's been awarded the Joint Service Commendation Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, the Combat Infantry Badge. Can you consider him a rookie? Now, the reason us conservatives liked him is because he was disrupting what seemed like a bloated DEI-ridden operation at the Department of Defense. I think that's exactly what he's doing, and is the military-industrial complex making him pay as a result of it. Well, with the latest update on all this, Jon Decker, White House correspondent. Good morning, John. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, always great to be on your show. Thanks for having me on today.
All right, it seems like Pete Hegseth's making the rounds. Give us the latest. Is Donald Trump sticking with his Secretary of Defense?
Well, that's what the president said yesterday. The president has the right to change his mind, but it sounded like he's backing his Secretary of Defense. And I think that as it relates to the story that has caused all of this hubbub as it relates to his job, I think the story being out there, unless there's another shoe to drop, the story's going away by the end of this week. But it's certainly not a good look for Pete Hegseth, who is involved in that group chat on Signal, that unsecured app. And we know about that story. This is another chat that he had, unsecured app on his private phone on Signal, and included in that chat group was his wife, sharing sensitive information about an impending attack on Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Talking with Jon Decker, White House correspondent. Now, John, did this Signal chat conversation take place around the same time as the other one? In fact, did it involve the same exact attack?
Yeah, so it did. It did involve the same exact attack. And the difference with this particular conversation is that, according to the reporting, which has not been denied by the Pentagon, this conversation, this group chat conversation, occurred on Pete Hegseth's personal phone. And again, this is an unsecured app that we're talking about.
Now, is the White House chalking this up to kind of rookie mistakes? First few months of an administration, that type of thing. He's learned from it. We're going to move on from this. Or are they playing more offensive, going, these are disgruntled employees, going after them, or maybe a combination of both? How's the White House responding?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both in terms of the way the White House has responded. The way that Pete Hegseth has responded is to essentially attack the messenger, the individuals that provided sourcing for this story, the writers of this story. But he hasn't said the story's wrong. He hasn't said he didn't have that conversation on the Signal app. But instead, what he has spoken about how the people that provided the sourcing for the story are disgruntled former Pentagon employees.
That's Jon Decker, NBC White House correspondent, joining Jeff and Bill live. Want to talk about Republicans. I've only seen one Republican so far saying maybe Pete should step down. What are you reading in the tea leaves? What are you hearing in the wind as far as Republican continued support for the Secretary of Defense?
Well, remember, the most important Republican is President Donald Trump. As long as the president continues to show confidence and support in Pete Hegseth, then he's going to remain the Secretary of Defense. And it doesn't matter what one Republican House member, that's Don Bacon, he's a Republican who represents a district in Omaha, Nebraska. Doesn't matter what he says, although he comes from a military background. He served, before entering politics, he served in the military as a general. So he's very much familiar with the rules that apply to members of the military in terms of sharing information over unsecured apps, and also information that is, in some cases, top secret.
Last question for you, Jon Decker. You mentioned at the very beginning that the president can always change his mind. You've been at the White House for a while. You've seen this happen. They come out and go, oh, we're absolutely behind him. And then within about a week, they resign. Is that a possibility here?
Always a possibility with the president. But, look, like I said, if there's another element to the story that we don't know about, then perhaps we'll see the president hedging or waffling, in terms of his support for Pete Hegseth. But as of right now, certainly based upon what he said yesterday, he's fully supportive of Pete Hegseth.
Great reporting. Jon Decker, White House correspondent, thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Thank you.
All right, we'll continue with your phone calls and texts, and we got You Choose the News. Coming up, you're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, Bill, it's about that time of the morning. People are reaching for what they really need,
Yes.
which is a
liquor.
Warm dosage. You choose the news.
Oh, bad choice. All righty. Yes, it's that time of the morning where we get to make questionable decisions, not just the stuff that comes out of my pie hole. It is time for You Choose the News. Yes, it's everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, loved by women, children, and some men all across the country. Yes, you know how we roll. We take really silly stories that I found on the interwebs, giving them even more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Why? Well, the people in charge don't wake up for about another 10 minutes. So we are going to take full advantage of being left unsupervised. Yes, at some point in our lives, both Jeff and I were latchkey kids, and we know the joys of freedom. And this is what we do. Alrighty. Blake Olson, of course, joins us from the newsroom as we play today's game show. Jeff Hunt is in the studio. Gentlemen, here are your headlines for today. Headline number 1. Oh, and there is an audio version of one of the answers if you are lucky enough to find it this morning. Just a hint. Okay, here we go. Headline number 1, auditioning for the sequel to Clueless. Headline number 2, end of a friendship. Headline number 3, push for voter competency. And headline number 4, stop copying me. Mr. Hunt,
Stop copying me.
Stop copying me. Well, sometimes, there's a unique connection between twins, but identical twins Bridget and Paula Powers of Australia are going viral as they recount an armed carjacking incident that involved their mother. Speaking with 7 News Queensland, the twins did something rather unusual. Have a listen.
And one guy, he was up there with our mum, and he went up there, and he was coming back down towards us, and he goes, run, he's got a gun. And our heart started to pound, and I said, oh, Mum, where's Mum? And poor Mum was stuck up there, but apparently our brave Mum, she goes, are you all right? Because he had all blood all over his face.
Yes,
And he goes,
they are speaking in sequence, and they're even wearing the same shirt, and they do the same gestures as they're talking. It is not planned. It is totally off the top of their head.
So that's overlaid. They're not talking at the same time.
Yes, they are. They're standing right next to each other.
What? Why are they talking at the same time?
They're both being interviewed. They're twins, and they're being interviewed about mom involved in a carjacking incident.
No way.
Yes. They're talking at the same time.
How close to him do you think you were?
Well, see, he was up there, and we were past our driveway.
Yes, they're standing next to each other, talking to the reporter at the same time. And they are wearing the same shirt, and many of their gestures are the same. Sometimes one will make the same gesture with the right hand, the other one's doing it with the left hand at the same time. But yes, they speak in sequence. The twins actually run an animal rescue organization in Australia, and they previously appeared on Good Morning Britain in 2016, where they did the same thing in a conversation with host Piers Morgan. And they said, yeah, they speak in stereo almost all the time. Yeah, crazy to hear about. Yeah, in fact, here, we got a minute here. We're going to go back.
Blood all over his face. And he goes, I'll shoot you. She goes, hey, I'm here to help.
Yes, that's them talking at the same time, standing next to each other.
That'd be
I know.
so annoying in a family.
Yes, it would be.
Just one of you.
Yes, just one of you. Stop it. Yes. But
What
oh
are
my
their
God, I couldn't
names
believe
again?
it. Hang on a sec here. Got to go back over. It is Bridget and Paula Powers. Bridget and Paula Powers.
I've gotta
Yeah,
see
out of
this.
Queensland, Australia. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Alrighty.
That is nuts.
Blakey, you're up now, sir. Auditioning for the sequel to Clueless. End of a friendship or push for voter competency?
End of a friendship.
Yeah, this is going to be totally the end of a friendship. Pfft, man's best friend, my foot. A walker who was injured after falling from a steep Lake District crag told mountain rescuers his dog Benji pushed him. Evidently, Benji didn't get enough treats before they left for the hike. Man fell down a very steep descent from Eagle Crag on Good Friday afternoon. He had gone to lift Benji down a steep step, and the dog just went, ha, forget you, push, and he goes tumbling down the hillside. Luckily, his fall was broken by a ledge and his body hitting the ground. He did suffer a gash to his head after being alerted by a passing walker. Volunteers were called to help, and they got him out. And I guess Benji's no longer a good boy.
That happened to Brian Creasy about 25 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember
Tripped him.
that?
Yeah, exactly. My dog tripped me.
Yeah, sure.
I think your dog doesn't like you. All right. Final choice this morning, sir. Mr. Hunt, auditioning for the sequel to Clueless or push for voter competency?
Clueless.
Yes, auditioning for the sequel to Clueless. As if Nico Harrison, the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, this one's for Blake, couldn't sound any dumber after trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers. Well, he decided to take out his giant foot and insert it directly into his mouth recently.
Yes, he did.
Nico Harrison held his exit interview for the 24-25 season after the Mavericks missed the playoff for just a second time this decade. Well, part of that reason is because they traded away Luka in the middle of the night to the L.A. Lakers. During the 25-minute interview, Harrison was asked if he didn't understand how important Luka was to the fan base, and he responded,
I didn't know Luka was so important to the fan base. I didn't know it was quite up to this level.
That's nuts, because Luka Doncic was like the heir to Dirk Nowitzki's throne. Luka has said repeatedly that he wanted to play his entire career in Dallas. Just fundamentally, to admit you don't know how important Luka is to the fan base is kind of an indication that maybe you shouldn't have the job if you don't realize who the fan base likes. Yes, I mean, this is just ridiculous. That
that was bad.
That would be like changing GMs in the Elway era, and then the GM coming in and training away Elway. You're like, hang on, or Steve Atwater, or someone like that. You're like, wait. No, I don't think we need to trade Terrell Davis. Stop that. Yeah, you're the GM, and you don't understand how important the player is to not only the team but also the fan base. That is just ridiculous. But again, he's going to still cash the check. Wish we all could do that.
No
That'd be
doubt.
nice.
That was a horrible move.
I know. It's not really helping him out. And did you see Luka's tears when he returned to Dallas?
Oh yeah, I did see that.
That was crazy.
No, it is.
Yeah.
They loved him.
Because
it's not like getting rid of Michael Malone or anything.
No, not at all. Not the same thing.
No, it's a superstar.
Yeah.
That's a once in a lifetime type player.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. That's huge.
Well, that's it. That's the end of You Choose the News. Back to you, Jeff.
All right, Jeffco judge dropping charges against a man accused of killing 2 women in a 2021 drunk driving crash. You'll never believe the reason why. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is 710 KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, April 22nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson. A Jeffco judge dropping charges against a man accused of killing 2 women in a 2021 drunk driving crash. Denver7 has done some great investigations into essentially a loophole, a change in a law that took place last year that is essentially said if a state doctor deems you unsuitable to stand trial, the judge must dismiss the case. Now, what does it mean to be deemed to be unsuitable to fit trial or stand trial? Well, essentially things like a traumatic brain injury from a car accident where you killed 2 people. So let me explain this again. Dude runs into 2 women, kills them, car explodes, fire, all that stuff, hits his head during the car accident, okay? Gets a TBI. Also has ADHD. And a state doc goes, he's unfit to stand trial. Now, under Colorado law, he must be released. He has gone on to get a whole bunch of other criminal citations, from drinking in public to fighting, all that stuff. The dude is out, and he killed 2 people. We're going to talk with Natalie Chuck of Channel 7 all about this, and maybe hopefully some potential changes in laws. I outreach to Republicans on this because this is something that's got to be addressed. But now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, 41 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 72 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story today is Earth Day. Thank you, God, for creating Earth.
Thank you, Mother Earth.
Yeah. I think we need to remind them who created Earth.
Let's form a circle and hold hands and talk about
That's right.
Mother Earth and Saint Al Gore.
Exactly. Now, this day, I think, Jeff, was all about the environmentalists, correct?
I lost count. And that stuff all changed. And I often think about all the times I was raised in a government-run school and panicked over problems about the environment. Like, if you used hairspray, you were going to put a hole in the ozone.
Yeah,
and then acid rain was going to melt your face.
See, that had to have been tough for you to grow up during that time. I never had to experience that.
Such a blow.
I mean, we were going to school without seat belts, and and then we were carrying rifles into school because everyone hunted.
Shooting club after class. Yeah. No,
right,
and then
exactly.
Terrified if you didn't recycle, and that the turtles were going to end up with those little Coke can plastic stuff around them.
We had the best school lunches, though. They have horrible school lunches now. Man, the bread that they made in our schools, oh my goodness, it was homemade. It was natural. Everything was healthy back then. But
I was playing for my boys the other day, Adam Sandler's Sloppy Joe song.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't even really deal with it. They go to a charter school and everyone brings their own lunch. But I'm like, dude, you used to have the lunch lady, and she had the big hair coming out from the mall. And, Sloppy Joe's, Sloppy Joe's.
I have the radio preview release of that Adam Sandler album at home. Yeah, before it was released to the public. I have that. It was released to radio stations.
Billy airdrops in with the totally unique
I held on to that. Yeah.
music.
It was
fact.
It was a preview. It was a preview, and there's no artwork or anything else. It's just got a big circle sticker on it that said Adam Sandler new album, and then has a couple of highlighted tracks on it. That's it. And then you got track listings on the back. Yeah, I've got the pre-release of that one.
Oh man, love it. All right.
I used to throw that on at college parties, and then all of a sudden, about part of the way through, people start listening to it and go, "Hey, this is funny," and they'd start catching it. Yeah.
That's great. All right. The White House says there are no plans to replace Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. The White House X account posted wrong, fake news in response to NPR. Saying that the White House was in the process of looking for a new Secretary of Defense. NBC White House correspondent Jon Decker on with Jeff and Billy a few minutes ago.
Sounded like he's backing his Secretary of Defense. And I think that as it relates to the story that has caused all of this hubbub as it relates to his job, I think the story being out there, unless there's another shoe to drop, the story's going away by the end of this week.
And he was, of course, DJT. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says that there will be a vote on DJT's tariff policy. This slime ball thinks there might be enough Republican support to pass a resolution in the Senate. Those would be establishment slime balls as well. VP J.D. Vance announcing the U.S. and India have officially agreed to terms to begin trade negotiations.
That America and India have officially finalized the terms of reference for the trade negotiation. I think this is a vital step. Thank you. I believe this is a vital step toward realizing President Trump's and Prime Minister Modi's vision, because it sets a roadmap toward a final deal between our nations.
Google is back in court after a federal court ruled the company operates a monopoly. The Department of Justice is proposing a package of remedies to end the tech giant's illegal monopoly and restore competition. The hearing, which started Monday, will determine if the company can remain in its current form or will have to face penalties like selling off its Chrome web browser. Rumors of a visit by personnel from DOJ prompted a brief protest in Boulder on Monday. Federal budget cuts implemented by DOJ have led to employee layoffs at Boulder's Department of Commerce campus. Congressman Joe Neguse was visiting the campus on Monday to speak with employees of agencies that have been affected by the layoffs. He told several dozen protesters the DOJ visit was just a rumor and that no further layoffs have been scheduled for the campus. Pueblo School District 70 says they were victims of an apparent swatting incident in Pueblo West. A Pueblo County Sheriff's Office representative says the alleged email threat on Sunday came from out of state and not from a student. In response, 3 schools were closed and enhanced security was sent to school campuses. Students are cleared to return back to school today. That's an interesting story. The funeral for Pope Francis will be Saturday. DJT said that he and the First Lady will be in attendance. Inevitable West on X says the Catholics worldwide are now demanding Bishop Athanasius Schneider replace Pope Francis. There's an attack on Christianity in the West, and thanks to globalists allowing the invasion of non-Christians into places like the UK and France.
Maybe in 30 or 40 years, when it's now going on, so the majority of the population of Europe will be Islamic. Europe will be Islamic when this will go on, because the European people have almost no children, 1 or 2. The Muslims there, they have 5, 6 to 10 children. And so it is, you can only make mathematics, and then you can see that they will be in the majority.
And that would be sad. In Lodo last night.
3-point game. Here come the Nuggets.
Think about taking a foul here.
Brown passes up a 3. Now he fires. Missed it badly. Jokic with the rebound. Clock ticks to 2. Jokic, no. And that is it.
Nuggets Clippers last night, game 2, opening round of the playoffs. Jokic had a triple-double, but they ran out of gas. He also had 7 turnovers, a big one late in the game. Game 3 moves to L.A. It's tied at 1. Stanley Cup playoffs. Avalanche and the Stars in overtime tied at 3.
Here's Colin Blackwell going at Johnson. Blackwell into the slot, shoots. Save made through traffic by Blackwood. Blackwell scores! It's over! This series is tied!
Avalanche fall to the Stars 4-3 the final. Blackwell scores on Blackwood. What a game last night. 39 in Parker. It is 40 in Glendale, 41 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Earth Day.
Hoaxsters. This group, no, this group right here.
Hoaxsters. Blake Olson.
My name's Blake.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your KNUS forecast for the Denver metro area calls for a very pleasant Tuesday. We'll be looking at temperatures today and again tomorrow. And also for your Thursday, running a little above average. We'll see temperatures lower to maybe a mid-70 for highs. Some morning sunshine, little building afternoon cloud cover. Couple of showers and storms not out of the question today. A better chance of some showers and a few spring thunderstorms Wednesday and Thursday. Lows tonight and the next few nights, low to mid-40s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. This is just a wild story, and I'm so
crazy
glad we have local journalists that cover this.
Yes.
Right?
Local
Because
journalism doing local journalist work. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, this is the stuff that
this is really
can
cool.
Change lives if we can get it changed. So Denver7 has been investigating a Jeffco judge, and she even admits her hands were tied in this ruling because of this law. The judge did not want to let this person out. Okay, had to drop charges against a man accused of killing 2 women in a 2021 drunk driving crash. The dude plows into these ladies with his car, and car explodes, fire. One dies on scene, one dies a little bit later. And this guy ends up with a traumatic brain injury from the accident he caused. Okay? He then goes to trial, and state doctors deem him incompetent to stand trial because of this traumatic brain injury, in combination to some ADHD stuff he has too. Now, the prosecutors challenge the doctor, and this doesn't happen too often, because they have body camera footage of this guy interacting with police. Ramirez is his last name. By the way, he's driving more than 100 miles an hour when he hit these 2 ladies. And there's other subsequent body camera images from other instances he's had with police that show him interacting just fine.
And this is post-crash.
Yeah, post-crash, like years afterwards, okay?
Yep.
And then because these state docs deem him incompetent to stand trial, and because of a new law that got passed a year ago, the judge has to dismiss this case, and he gets to walk. There's a dude just out hanging out in Denver right now, and he killed 2 people in this car accident. So the reporter that's dove into all of this, done great investigative work, is Natalie Chuck with Denver7.
Great
She
work.
joins us now on the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning, Natalie. Thanks for joining our program.
Good morning. Thanks for getting up with us.
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me. I'm going to warn you, I've got dogs in the house, so I'm hoping they don't want to answer any of your questions.
Oh, we would love to have them participate. Now, again, just for because I guess I'm weird. What are the kind of dogs, and what are their names? This is so much more important than this. Okay.
Well, absolutely. German Shepherd, Lulu, and the Border Collie, Sky, both girls.
Oh, my gosh. You've got a busy household.
Now, she just said their names, so they're all coming over.
Yeah, exactly.
Lulu and Sky are walking over. Going, yes. What do you need?
Yes, and say that Jeff and Bill said, yes, you can have treats right now. Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah.
Oh, great.
So this is a wild case. You've been following it for a few years. I gave folks a brief overview of it, but just the other day you were in the court talking to Guillermo Ramirez, who is the gentleman at the center of all this, but give folks a sense of what has happened and the loophole that allowed this to take place.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for that great recap. It's a lot to digest, I know, as I was combing through all of it going, I really hope people are going to understand what's going on here because there's so much to dive into. But yeah, officially last Thursday it was that judge dismissed that case. She had worked for a few years at this point. This happened back in 2021 to try to keep it going, really. She was waiting to continue getting other evaluations, but at the end of the day, multiple doctors had the same finding, incompetent and not restorable. Depending on how you take those evaluations, some people want to argue that maybe that wasn't thorough enough. Some people might think that that's a fair assessment, but that's kind of where they are. And yeah, this law that passed in the 2024 session really ties the hands. And what's so interesting is that it's all because of this one word, right? The law used to read that a judge may dismiss the case if it's incompetent and not restorable as a finding, and that may change to shall, and that's where this all started.
Yeah, and I went and looked back at this law, and I was even texting with some lawmakers on this. This was passed bipartisan, almost unanimously. So I think it was one of those things where lawmakers were told it did something, and they weren't quite aware of the fact that that one particular word could create real problems. I mean, these bills are oftentimes multiple pages. So, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed. Now, this guy, let's go to the facts of the case. Guillermo Ramirez hits these two ladies. He was driving over 100 miles an hour, drunk. He had marijuana in his system, and he's had some subsequent run-ins with law enforcement. Talk about this gentleman, Guillermo Ramirez.
Yeah. And so just to clarify a little bit, yes, so his passenger in his car died. She was a young woman, mother of 3 kids, and then he hit another car with a family in it, 2 siblings who were adults, and a mother, and the mother in that car died. So 2 separate cars, 2 women, but yes, they both passed away. And then we come to find out through requesting Jeffco court documents, or the DA's office over there, that he did have those subsequential arrests, and that's how they use that body cam video. But what's so interesting is you come to realize that while those cases, some of them were dismissed as well because of the same incompetent and not restorable finding. It's just that judges in those cases chose to dismiss it much more early on than in this one that continued dragging out. And so sometimes, because those cases get dismissed for an incompetent and not restorable finding, they're sealed. So the only reason that we were able to read through any of those documents is because they were in evidence as another case, right? So in those instances, he was allegedly in Lakewood, caught with a girl in a car drinking tequila. The car was parked. It was not moving, but still, given the circumstances, that one kind of stuck out to us. And then prior to the crash, he had a domestic violence case going on against a girlfriend who was a minor at the time. Ramirez was 18 when the crash happened in 2021. And then that one did eventually get dismissed after the crash happened, again, because of that competency finding. So really just fascinating. There was another one that he was cited in Denver for fighting in public. It's my understanding that was a fight with a neighbor, but that one was also dismissed. So, it was dropped by the prosecutors. So really interesting stuff.
Now, I'm just having a hard time wrapping my brain around the way our law works in Colorado, because you can commit these atrocities where people die. And from my reading of the law, the belief was, well, if you're incompetent to stand trial, at least we're going to get you off the street into a mental health facility. But from my reading of your articles, the challenge is there's not enough beds. So if there's not a bed for these people to go to that commit these atrocities, then they're just released? Is that essentially what is happening here?
Yeah, it essentially is. And, I'm glad you brought up the bipartisan part of this, because I do think that everyone who's involved in these, right, the victims, the judges, the officials, they can understand, the legislators, that the goal of this bill was to prevent people from sitting in jails who need mental help and just sort of, for lack of a better term, wasting away while they wait for a trial that keeps getting kicked and kicked and kicked because they're never going to be found competent, right? However, the caveat in the first case that we covered, you can go back and look at it, involving a doctor in Lakewood, and he was the first one to bring this to our attention. We covered that a few months back. The defendant in his case really did need psychiatric care and help, which is kind of different than what we're seeing in this case with Ramirez. And the judge is going, I can't civilly commit someone, which is what it's called when a judge is ordering someone go to the state hospital or another hospital that's run by the state to get treatment. I can't order someone to go to a bed that doesn't exist. So that was the problem with that one. And then, of course, we got some cameras in the courtroom, and suddenly there was a bed available. Call that TV magic, call that coincidental timing, whatever you want to call it. But that is the problem that they're seeing. And there was no fiscal note, passed with this bill to allow any sort of funding to hopefully ramp that up. So there's good intent, I think, from everybody involved. But in terms of the way they're rolling out the system, that's up to interpretation as to whether that's working or not.
We're talking with Natalie Chuck. She's with Denver7. She's an investigative reporter. Article coming out. Jeffco judge had to drop charges against a man accused of killing 2 women in a 2021 drunk driving crash. And we're getting into the details as why. She's been spending a few years covering cases similar to basically an unintended consequence around a Colorado amended law. Now, the district attorney, the Jefferson County district attorney, wanted to try to find a way to keep this guy in prison by essentially challenging the doctor's rulings, and that is not something that's very common. Talk about what the Jeffco DA did to try to alleviate this problem.
Yeah, definitely not common, and I was glad that they said that. We interviewed them afterwards, and they addressed it's not common for us to do this. Typically, you kind of take a doctor or two's findings at face value. In this case, instead of getting a second evaluation of him, the judge said, you can call in the doctors who evaluated him to testify at competency hearings, and then I will make a decision. You can come and make a case as to why these doctors didn't do their job in the prosecution's opinion. And what is so interesting about this is that I was explaining to someone, typically when you're looking through these court documents and if someone is found incompetent and not restorable, which for anyone who doesn't know, that just means they are not mentally capable of aiding in their own defense, right? There's kind of a stamp on the court documents, and that's all it says, because obviously with HIPAA, we're never going to get an inside look at exactly what these evaluations said. But what's so rare in this case is that we did, because we could order the court transcripts of the doctor testifying as to why she found him incompetent and not restorable. And again, that is just super rare for prosecutors to do. And they tried to essentially poke holes over the course of 3 different hearings in their theory by playing out body cam video in the middle of court going, well, clearly he's able to communicate here, and this is while you guys have been evaluating him. And look at his restoration assessments, basically him going to these sessions and trying to become restorable. He's passing. He's doing fine. It's just that when he has to talk about this case, he doesn't want to talk about it. He kind of shuts down. And they said, he had a hard time finding his words. That's really kind of what the premise of this all came down to. So it was really fascinating because we never get an inside look at what doctors are thinking like we did in this one.
That's Natalie Chuck, investigative reporter for KMGH Denver7, joining Jeff and Bill live. We're talking about a 2021 drunk driving crash in which the driver kills 2 people but has been declared incompetent, so doesn't have to face any charges. But question is, how was the person determined incompetent, and is there any way they'd be held, responsible for the crash later on? Now, personally, I feel this is more of the intent of the law as this loophole was crafted out. I'm not going to have you speak to that, Natalie. That's not fair. You do actually journalism stuff, and we just get to be talk show host. But the question I've got for you is, in your history and looking into the case, did you find anything with the defendant where he was employed? Was he working? Was he living in a group home? What sort of support services did he need? And what I'm looking at is if he is mentally incompetent and has a problem participating in his own defense or even making a judgment call between right and wrong, what do we see in the rest of his life? Is he able to hold down a regular job, or does he have to have support, and does he have to live in a group support home system in which someone that normally would have this type of a mental condition would be required to do? What did you find?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the records that we obtained, we did not have any sort of documentation citing jobs, working. Sometimes that will come out in court documents showing that somebody was at work or had a job or was not able to keep it due to XYZ. That didn't come up in this, and I think it's so important to remember in this case that he was 18. He had just turned 18 when this crash happened. So there was some mention in some records of criminal involvement when he was a minor, but again, he's a minor at that time, so there weren't a lot of specifics in there about what exactly went on. And if anything went on behind the scenes, with his family or loved ones trying to get him some sort of mental health treatment, that wasn't documented for us. Beyond any sort of treatment that was required by courts to go to restoration sessions, I didn't see anything in there in terms of any sort of help. But when we sat down with the director of the Office of Civil and Forensic Mental Health, that's a mouthful, she did say that they are trying to implement these group homes and that they're voluntary, they're not court mandated, and they encourage people to go to them. But again, if something isn't court ordered, and as we know, even sometimes if it is, it's tough to kind of assess if and how that is working for people unless they come forward and tell us themselves.
Oh, boy. Natalie Chuck, investigative reporter with KMGH, Denver7. Boy, do we feel you. Jeff and I both have 4 kids, and we understand the idea of telling our kids it's absolutely necessary to clean your rooms. And then they go, I just forgot. Yeah, I totally get that. The idea that if it's not as court mandated, the room doesn't get cleaned. So if you don't hold the allowance hostage, the room doesn't get cleaned. Now, I got a call off air, and they wanted to kind of address this. We touched on it a little bit, but Natalie Chuck, investigative reporter with KMGH, was there any way that the DEA could have held him in some sort of a program or held him in custody longer? And what the caller was looking at is we had the shooter in Boulder, and when they were declared mentally incompetent, they were in a mental health facility and had some other parameters around them. Why, in this case, do we not approach this defendant who did, and now granted, not necessarily the same crime, but did end in fatalities? Do we not have them into some sort of a mandated state program? Why is that not a part of this, just from your investigative reporting?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it is subject to interpretation. Obviously, everybody in the country knows about the King Soopers mass shooter and other big cases where competency has been brought up in Colorado. I'm trying to figure out how to put this delicately. Whether someone will go on record and say why different defendants get treated differently, I haven't had them do that yet. I have heard from multiple people during our coverage saying if these cases that we've covered were higher profile, would the outcome be different? And it's a question that you kind of have to sit with and think about, because at the end of the day, like you can hear in our story, the director, Leroy Joseph, says not everybody who is found incompetent and not restorable necessarily is going to qualify for a bed in the state hospital in Pueblo, another bed at a mental health facility. Maybe they're incompetent to stand trial, but they can drive a car and have a job and operate in society. And legally, that is kind of the definition of incompetent and not restorable. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to get intense psychiatric treatment until they are better.
A Jeffco judge has dropped charges against a man accused of killing 2 women in a 2021 drunk driving crash. Natalie Chuck has done great investigative work on this. Natalie, you spoke with the family impacted by this accident. They, in your reporting, said they plan to challenge this, to even go to the state legislature to try to get some changes. Talk about what they're doing to try to make a difference here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, too, like I said, we covered this Lakewood case, a separate case a few months ago with Dr. Scott Green, and he said the same thing, right, that he has every intention of trying to take this to the Capitol and the legislative floor and discuss changes that they can make to it. And I think right now for the Bowmans who were involved in this case, they are kind of having to re-grieve all of it again. And that's something we consistently hear from victims, right? Saying that it's almost like until the court proceedings are done, and this has been going on for years for them, they cannot get through the healing process. They cannot work to feeling better. They were a very close family, 2 siblings with their single mom. They all lived together into their adult lives and spent pretty much every single day together, every waking minute. So I think that his intention is hopefully to kind of use this experience as drive and force him into making this change at the legislative level. While it's too early to say concretely what exactly they're doing and how they're going to go about that, I'm sure they would be glad to hear from any lawmakers out there who might be listening to this who want to get in contact with them and possibly listen to the changes that they would like to see happen. I know for a fact, I'm sure they would like that. And that goes for any of our coverage that you guys see and any other victims that you want to reach out to.
That's Natalie Chuck with Denver7. Natalie, bottom line, Guillermo Ramirez is out. This is a dangerous person who has led to the death of innocent people here in Colorado, and he's now out there on the streets. And
history of questionable decision making, and he's out on the street to make more questionable decisions based on a ruling that he makes questionable decisions because of a brain injury. Wonder what's going to happen.
It's heartbreaking. Well, Natalie Chuck, great reporting. Thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill show this morning.
Thank you so much. And tell Lulu and Sky they were wonderful little girls. They're fantastic. Thank you so much.
But I'm them at Bay down here. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Any opportunity we have to try to get more information out there about our reporting, we're happy to. Thank you.
That's Natalie Chuck with Denver7. I want to talk to you about our friends over at the Colorado Farm Bureau. Whether you pulled out your skis or snowmobiles this last winter, it was a great year for winter fun. But the snow means even more to Colorado agriculture, and I want you to know that our state's farmers and ranchers are doing their part to protect our future water resources. The people of Colorado agriculture always have conservation, efficiency, and reuse top of mind when it comes to water use. As the metro area continues to grow, Colorado Farm Bureau leads talks with state policymakers about preserving water for all areas of the state as pressure on the water system grows. It's going to take all of us to find a solution. My friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau are leaders in water conservation and water policy. They understand how to balance water for crops and water for families, and they're doing more with less. You can do your part. I recommend you join and become a member today. Go to the Colorado Farm Bureau by visiting coloradofarmbureau.com. That's coloradofarmbureau.com to join them. I was a little disappointed to see Republican support of this bill yesterday.
Yeah.
When I did my research on it. And it's nearly universal. That thing passed almost all the way through the Senate. So my concerns are I think the Republicans missed this one, and they need to fix it, and I think they should lead on it. So I'd like to see Republicans down at the state legislature lead on this because you have a dude out there.
Yeah, and think about this.
Who hurt his head because he killed people.
In a crash that he was responsible for, he suffers a traumatic brain injury, and then that is the reason that he then does not face charges. So again, the actions that he took that caused the death of other people and caused the traumatic brain injury, that brain injury is also the reason he doesn't face charges for the original decisions and choices. That's weird.
Yeah,
very weird. Although this, I think you're right about Republicans. This is something in which you can make a lot of hay with. You can make this into a good political platform, and it can be something going forward that, especially coming up with midterms, you can make a real issue. And the example I will give you are twofold. First, safe drug injection sites.
Yep.
2, decriminalizing fentanyl, most of the possession.
Yep.
Because remember what happened when fentanyl started to be big? It was the Democrat legislature here in Colorado that had lowered the penalties for how much fentanyl you can possess and what the charges are. And that was a really good piece of things that the Republicans could get behind. It was a really good issue.
Yeah.
And this is another really strong issue that Republicans should be able to take advantage of, because we know the Democrats think this is just business as usual, and this is exactly how things should be done going forward.
Well, and Bill, you know this, they introduced 600 bills down there.
I know.
State Capitol. And we at the end of every session, we're like, so which one changed your life out of the 500 or so that were passed?
Oh, exactly. And it's always regulations and rules on top of regulations and rules.
Yeah, mostly for special interest groups.
Yeah.
I want to take my competitor down in the soybean industry.
Yeah, so let me make it more difficult for them.
Yeah. In this case, you can actually do something that would put really dangerous people back behind bars.
Yeah, and the thing for me is that if the incompetency is caused by the original action, I'm not okay with wiping out any charges or consequences for it. Yes, you have the consequence of your actions having that injury or brain injury because of the choices, but other people have also been impacted. And so there should be a reasonable way to hold them responsible. And the reason that this is important to me is because I have a child that has a brain injury. And has problems processing information. And to me, I see the struggles that he goes through every day in order to be competent and to exist as everybody else does. And to me, this guy's given a pass. And I would never say that because of my child's brain injury, they should not be held responsible for choices they made, especially ones that would end somebody else's life. That's a really difficult thing. I keep imagining that it's my child that would sit there and make certain choices and go, well, can't be held responsible because, brain injury, can't remember this stuff. So sorry about that. I look at that as, are we giving some of these people a get-out-of-jail-free card? Because my son wants to be held responsible just like everybody else. He wants nothing more than to be normal, but he's not. So, yeah.
Heartbreaking. All right, phone lines are open if you want to join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Fascinating case coming out of Jefferson County. Guy hits a car. 2 people die, one on scene, one a little bit later. And because of the traumatic brain injury he gets from the case, he's deemed incompetent to stand trial, even though there's plenty of evidence later with run-ins with police that he can talk, he understands the difference between right and wrong and all that stuff. But he's deemed incompetent under a new law that was passed last year. It says the change was, a judge can dismiss the case or can put him in prison. The change was now to shall dismiss the case. And because there are no beds in our mental health facilities, dude's just walking around.
Yeah. Just like, because you get the traumatic brain injury. And the thing is that it was caused by the accident that he's responsible for.
Yes.
And that's the reason then that he's not held responsible.
18 years old.
Yeah.
Drunk, past the limit, with marijuana in the system. And Bill, what I appreciated about what you said is, with your family experience, there's no excuse.
No.
There's no excuse.
No, it isn't.
For harming other people and not having to pay the consequences. And this guy was interviewed. Natalie went after him after he was dismissed. He's walking out of the case. He puts his head. The guy looks like a total creep.
Yeah.
He puts a jacket over his head, won't answer any questions, has never apologized, never even said sorry.
Yeah. The thing for me is the idea of the responsibility, and the idea being that, okay, what I have a difficulty with is I can see someone who is declared mentally incompetent or has some challenges getting themselves into a situation where they didn't realize the consequence of their actions. That's not this case. The brain injury doesn't happen until the accident that takes 2 people's lives.
Right.
So he was fully competent when making the decision that led to this situation. That to me is shocking, because I would take into a point, because the idea being that when you looked at, and again, this is a bad analogy, but I'm going to use it because it is the one that is probably most top of mind and most familiar to the audience, and that is the King Super Shooter. Again, bad analogy, but I think the congruence between the two is the mental incompetency. And the argument with the King Super Shooter was that he was mentally incompetent and couldn't tell the difference of right versus wrong when he picked up the rifle and started killing people at the store and made the choices to drive to the store and everything else. That was the argument there. Here, he doesn't become mentally incompetent until post-accident, where 2 people die. So he had all of his faculties and could make all of the judgment prior to that led to the deaths. That is where I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this one, that we can't hold him responsible for something that he legally should have been held responsible for, but because of his actions, he now has a brain injury, and then that gets him off the hook for making the choices that he did sans brain injury before the deaths.
Well, and
it's weird.
So here are the options you have with the guy,
Yeah.
right? Under current law is, 1, we put him in prison. Okay, we can't do that because he's mentally incompetent. And I agree with the concern that putting people that are struggling mentally in a general prison population is probably not the best thing to do.
Not good at all.
All right, so I get that. But if the only alternative, if you don't have enough beds, is these dudes get to go home
Yeah.
and play PlayStation?
Yeah. And the thing for me is that there's no there's no outpatient. There's no, the idea is, sorry, no bed. We can't do anything. What? No, yes, we can.
Right.
There are other outpatient systems and services. They could have court-mandated meetings. They could have things like that would be, a command performance. But yet again, and the thing that bothers me a lot in this, and I really appreciate Natalie Chuck's reporting, investigative reporter from KMGH that joined us earlier in the hour. I really appreciate her looking into the other incidences in which this guy has had interactions with the police for doing other things wrong, and he seemed okay. He seemed, and I'm not saying like okay, like 110%. I'm just saying that he seemed to be able to process what was going on.
Sitting in a car drinking tequila with a girl.
Yeah, so he could process what was going on. He could process why he was in trouble. He could, and the argument about the brain injury is that he wouldn't be able to participate in his own defense. But when he was speaking with officers in these two incidents, he seemed to be able to speak in his own defense and talk about why or why not things could go wrong. So in those situations, it seems okay. It seems weird, and I really appreciate Natalie Chuck for highlighting this, that when it comes to this case, all of a sudden there's some sort of a mental block. And is that because of, something severe with the traumatic brain injury? Or is it because if we have a mental block here, we don't necessarily have to turn in the assignment or be held responsible for our decisions? But this is a tough one. But Jeff, I'm going to step aside just for a second here and talk to everybody about Wound Care Associates of Colorado, because this is an important conversation because of something that happened in my life and also the founder of Wound Care Associates of Colorado, Jennifer Walker's life. Both of us have incidents in our lives of a family member who had a chronic wound, a sore that just wasn't healing. It was being maintained a little bit, but it got infected. And the negative consequences of what happened. See, a little tiny problem doesn't seem like a big deal, but it can turn into a big problem. You don't think the little tiny torn tissue or skin is a big deal, but dirt, germs, and bacteria think that's an invitation for a party. Jennifer Walker, who founded Wound Care Associates of Colorado, had this in her own life. Her uncle had some comorbidities, diabetes, neuropathy, but he got a small cut on his toe and had some other stuff to deal with. Small cut versus the other medical conditions, you focus on the other medical conditions, but it was that small cut that took his life. Yes, it became infected. By the time he sought medical attention, there needed to be some amputations, but the amputation wasn't enough. The infection had spread so significantly, it took his life a short time after the amputation that was supposed to stop everything. So stop what you're doing right now. If you or someone in your family has a slow healing cut, a diabetic ulcer, a pressure sore, go to coloradowound.com today. coloradowound.com to contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Do not mess around. Fix the problem. Don't just maintain the problem with Wound Care Associates of Colorado, because their wound certified nurse practitioner will come to your location, set up a personalized treatment plan that will guarantee improved healing outcomes. Faster healing. They want that skin and tissue to heal, to keep the dirt, germs, and bacteria out, and most importantly, they're doing it on your schedule. They do the house call thing. You contact them at coloradowound.com. They set an appointment to come to your location, you or your loved one. Your loved one's in a retirement facility, a assisted living care center. They'll go to them to provide the treatment. They'll come to your home. You don't have to worry about taking off work, driving down there, sitting in the doctor's office, nothing like that. They work on your schedule, on your timeline. Reach out to them today, coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com. If you or someone in your family is dealing with a chronic cut, a diabetic ulcer, a pressure sore, I'm doing it in my life as well. My youngest daughter had a recent surgery, and we're making sure this wound is healing. It wasn't healing like we wanted it to, so we reached out through coloradowound.com to the Wound Care Associates of Colorado. I trust them. They're dealing with my family right now. You can trust them too. Talk to them today, coloradowound.com, and when you do, tell me you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show.
That's great to hear, Bill. We'll continue. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Great conversation with Natalie Chuck on this crazy guy that plowed into another car. 2 women die. He gets out because of this essentially a loophole, but others are saying it's a feature of a law that was passed in 2024 that says if a doctor deems you incompetent to stand trial, go home and play your PlayStation. And please don't hurt anybody again.
I'm super curious about the Republicans' votes for the bill. I can see the Dems vote for this, but the Republican votes are...
I think that was a problem. I think it's Republicans' job to fix it. So
it could be.
I outreach to both Paul Lundeen and Rose Puglisi. Hopefully they'll take note. But thank you to Natalie Chuck for joining us. Coming up next, Secretary Ambassador Jim Nicholson joining us to reflect on Pope Francis. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson, the former ambassador to the Holy See and son of Colorado. Jim Nicholson is going to be joining us. Great guy. Resident here for a while and then became chairman of the Republican National Committee, ambassador to the Holy See, and then Secretary of Veterans Affairs under George W. Bush. Give us some insight. I mean, spent 4 years at the Vatican representing the United States, knows how that place works. I got a chance to travel out there and stay with him because I grew up next door to him. And in fact, my parents bought the back part of his lot, and that's where I grew up. And he used to come down and take us horseback riding. Really, really wonderful guy. And got a chance to go spend about a week out at the Vatican with him and get a chance to tour and see some of the very unique aspects. Got to go down underneath the altar there and see the ancient roads of Rome that the Vatican's built upon. So very honored to have him joining us, and he'll give us some insights on Pope Francis as well as who might be the next pope. So you're not going to want to miss this conversation. This is going to be a unique one in Colorado. But now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
46 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 72 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, hey, today is Earth Day, and thank you, God, for creating a beautiful Earth. It's going to be beautiful in Colorado today. 47 announced Monday that he and First Lady Melania will attend the funeral of Pope Francis this Saturday. And the White House is denying a report it's looking to replace Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. A White House X account posted wrong, fake news in response to multiple reports claiming it was in the process of looking for a new leader at the Pentagon. Politicians who love war, want war, make money off war, and doing whatever they can to destroy Hegseth. White House correspondent Jon Decker on this morning with Jeff and Bill to talk about DJT supporting Hegseth.
Sounded like he's backing his Secretary of Defense, and I think that as it relates to the story that has caused all of this hubbub as it relates to his job, I think the story being out there, unless there's another shoe to drop, the story's going away by the end of this week.
Here's Hegseth a few minutes ago on Fox News.
What was shared over Signal, then and now, however you characterize it, was informal, unclassified coordinations for media coordination and other things. That's what I've said from the beginning. At the beginning, it was left-wing reporters from The Atlantic who got a hold of it and then wanted to create a problem for the president. This is what it's all about, trying to get at President Trump and his agenda.
And they'll keep fighting. Stay tuned. Swiss drug maker Roche will invest $50 billion in the U.S. over the next 5 years. The company announced today that the money will create 12,000 jobs. It will also be used to create research and development sites while expanding manufacturing in Indiana, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and California. An investigation is underway after an engine problem led to a fire on a Delta jet. The flight from Orlando to Atlanta was halted on the tarmac when flames shot out of an engine before takeoff on Monday at Orlando International Airport. All crew and passengers were able to exit the plane safely. Denver7 investigating an incredible story. Guillermo Ramirez kills 2 women after a crash in Jefferson County. One was in his car. The dude was intoxicated and sketched, to say the least, it sounds like. Ramirez walks because, well, he had a brain injury, and the law says that he's incompetent to stand trial. Reporter Natalie Chuck on with Jeff and Billy last hour. The problem is the law in Colorado, and she's covered it before.
The caveat in the first case that we covered, you can go back and look at it, it's involving a doctor in Lakewood, and he was the first one to bring this to our attention. We covered that a few months back. You know, the defendant in his case really did need psychiatric care and help, which is kind of different than what we're seeing in this case with Ramirez. And the judge is going, I can't civilly commit someone, which is what it's called when a judge is ordering someone go to the state hospital or another hospital that's run by the state to get treatment. I can't order someone to go to a bed that doesn't exist. So that was the problem with that one. And then, of course, we got some cameras in the courtroom, and suddenly there was a bed available. Call that TV magic, call that coincidental timing, whatever you want to call it. But that is the problem that they're seeing. And there was no fiscal note, passed with this bill to allow any sort of funding to hopefully ramp that up.
Maybe Republicans will zero in on this one in the future in Colorado. Sheriff Jeffrey Gall in Maryland, who knows all about the Citizen of the Year, Kilmar Garcia, I joke, says, yes, your friendly neighbor is MS-13.
Absolutely.
Have you seen the tattoos, Sheriff?
I've seen the tattoos, I've seen the pictures, I've seen the clothing, I've seen the reports of law enforcement and confidential informants stepping forward and confirming not only his place within the gang, but what some of the things that he is accused of doing in order to have the name that he had. I don't have those reports directly in front of me, but I've reviewed those reports as we've dug deeper into this issue and the visit to El Salvador again, and just how just tone deaf it is to go visit this individual in El Salvador.
In Lodo last night.
3-point game. Here come the Nuggets.
Think about taking a foul here.
Brown passes up a three. Now he fires. Missed it badly. Jokic with the rebound. Clock ticks to 2. Jokic, no. And that is it.
Nikola Jokic triple-double, but he had 7 turnovers, and the Clippers beat the Nuggets last night in the opening round of the playoffs. Game 2. Game 3 moves to L.A., tied at 1. Stanley Cup playoffs, Avalanche Stars in overtime. It was tied at 3.
Here's Colin Blackwell going at Johnson. Blackwell into the slot, shoots. Save made through traffic by Blackwood. Blackwell scores! It's over! This series is tied!
What a game. But the Avalanche lose it, tied at 1, comes back here to Colorado for Game 3. Blackwell scores on Blackwood. 43 in Brighton, 44 in Centennial, 46 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Tuesday morning. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your KNUS forecast for the Denver metro area calls for a very pleasant Tuesday. We'll be looking at temperatures today and again tomorrow, and also for your Thursday running a little above average. We'll see temperatures lower to maybe a mid-70 for highs. Some morning sunshine, little building afternoon cloud cover. A couple of showers and storms not out of the question today. A better chance of some showers and a few spring thunderstorms Wednesday and Thursday. Lows tonight and the next few nights, low to mid-40s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, I feel incredibly honored that he's joining us. I look up to this guy in so many ways. He has lived a life that of great faith, of great public service, and he's an inspiration to so many. He served as the ambassador to the Holy See from 2001 to 2005, also the chairman of the National Republican Committee, Secretary of Veterans Affairs. In 2003, Pope John Paul II knighted Jim Nicholson with the Grand Cross for his leadership on human rights issues and standing for religious freedom. And he joins us on the Jeff and Bill Show. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. I apologize. I have a cold, and I'm all right.
Oh, we got you just fine, sir. Big day yesterday as Pope Francis moved on to glory and joined Jesus Christ in heaven. Give us your thoughts on your maybe your perspective on him. Did you get a chance to meet him?
I did meet him. I met him actually over an issue, which is a different story, but it has to do with his then pending encyclical called Laudato Si, which had to do with the environment. But I met him. I met him there briefly. Met his senior staff, of course, in intense meetings. But he was a wonderful man in that he was a faithful priest all his life, and that's a lot to be thankful for. And he really cared about the poor and the vulnerable, the disadvantaged, and he walked the walk. He lived, a modest life himself in spite of the perks that were available to him. He didn't take advantage of those, and he was consistent and had a real compassion for the poor, for immigrants. He saw all those people in Argentina growing up that were suffering from the corruption of the socialist Peron regime, and it had an indelible impact on him. And so I went to Mass every day in Lent, and I prayed for him every day. But I did not agree with him on a lot of the policy parts of his papacy, but the fundamentals were there. He was a real faithful priest.
That voice you're hearing is Jim Nicholson, a former chairman of the National Republican National Committee and ambassador to the Holy See from 2001 to 2005, and Secretary of Veterans Affairs, storied career in public service. Secretary Nicholson, you get a chance to see popes in a very unique way. You served when Pope John Paul II was the Pope. Talk a little bit about the responsibility that a Pope has, the pressure upon them, and give us some reflections on how Pope Francis lived out his commitment to his faith.
Well, a pope in the papacy is, I think they call it a theocratic, absolute, elective monarchy, which really gives the pope, supreme control, supreme power over the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches of that sovereign state, which is called the Holy See, which has been in existence for a very long time. And it's a state, and it has diplomatic relations with, I think, 170 countries, or did then. And the Pope has a very large, I used to call a moral megaphone. And under my watch as the ambassador, I presented my credentials to John Paul II on 9/13 of 01 and was able to brief him on what had happened 48 hours prior. And he was as sad as I was, and we said a prayer for the victims, but he said something important. He said, Ambassador Nicholson, we have to stop these people who are killing in the name of God. And that was not a privileged communication, so we were able to report that. And that gave us really a real boost in putting a coalition together of European countries to go into Afghanistan, to get those people who had attacked us. Iraq was a different story. John Paul didn't see it the way President Bush did. He was opposed to it, but he never said it was immoral, and we remained with good diplomatic relations and had a lot of important projects that we worked on together. This Pope has not had, I don't think, the kind of attitude toward the United States that one would like, at least I would like. I don't think he really understood or understands the United States and understands the benefits of capitalism and the reason that we in this country, because of capitalism and free markets, are so wealthy that we're able to help so many other people in the world. I don't know what it is now, but when I was over there, the United States provided, I think, over half of the financial support of the Universal Church. So that, that's a pretty good testament to the success of our economic system and the generosity of Catholics.
I think you're exactly right. That voice you're hearing is Jim Nicholson, former ambassador to the Holy See. And I know, sir, you're struggling with a cold, so we won't keep you too much longer. I do want to ask you, what would you like to see in the selection of the next pope?
Well, I think this pope, God bless him, I think he's been progressive in ways, possessed with wokeism, and I'd like to see a pope bring the leadership of the church back to a more conventional, conservative point of view, and I'd like to see a leader who is not as confused or confusing as Pope Francis, and I say that because there are things that to me are rather inexplicable. Pope John Paul II wanted two things to happen for the rest of his papacy. He wanted to establish diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China, and he wanted to make a trip to Russia. But China's price for diplomatic relations was that he would cede control of the selection of bishops in the Catholic communities of China. And he said, absolutely not. We won't do that. And this Pope has done that. And I am at a loss for what he's gotten from China for having made that major concession. So I hope we have, we have a Pope that's, a little more back to what I think is protective of the church and the values of the church, and not compromising those. We all know the famous line that Francis made when asked about, whether or not he would condone homosexual priests, and saying, quote, "Who am I to judge?" Well, if he's not to judge, who is? I mean, he is the leader. He's that, what do we call that, absolute monarch, and that gives him tremendous responsibility. And I think he should, this next pope hopefully will be clear in his direction of where he wants the church to go, because I think it's become quite divided. And I personally, again, think that Francis spent way too much of his time and his political currency on climate change, when he could have spent more time on evangelizing the countries right there in Europe, where the churches are empty. So that there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot of reason to be hopeful, because there are a lot of young people that are finding a vacancy in their life, I think, and looking now more back, toward God and Jesus, and for raison d'etre, and for peace and consolation. And I hope we have a pope that speaks to that.
That's the voice of Jim Nicholson, former ambassador to the Vatican, joining Jeff and Bill live. Now, I want to ask you, sir, I know that you're not feeling well, so we'll keep it short. Do you think this selection will be quick, or will it be drawn out? How quickly do you think we'll see the white smoke in the air?
If I knew that, I could probably make some money in Las Vegas, but I don't. I tend to think that it will be somewhat drawn out, because there are no notional favorites that I know of, and it's a fact that the cardinals from around the world, and there are 200 and some of them, that they really don't know each other that well. They come to Rome rarely together. They're spread throughout the world, so it will take some time, I think, for certain factions to develop, and the discussions and the education that will ensue from that when there's a certain group that's going to become an advocate for a candidate, and so I think it's going to take some time. I don't know how much time I'd be fooling you if I said I did, because I don't.
That's Jim Nicholson, former Secretary of Veterans Affairs and former ambassador to the Holy See. Sir, I want to just take a moment of personal privilege and let you know that I've spent 20-plus years in politics, inspired by you. Growing up next to you, I watched your career, and I'll say this, they don't make them like they used to. You served your country in war. You served your country in politics. You served your country at the Vatican. You served your country as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. I want to just say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being such a great inspiration, sir. And thank you for your time this morning.
Well, thank you. It's all been a privilege. Believe me, this is a fantastic country, and it's worthy of our service and our love and our attention.
And Secretary Nicholson,
you,
I got a phone call off air, and Barb DeGroot says she hopes you feel better. She's listening this morning and says hi.
Oh, my old neighbor. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Well, that's nice. God bless you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. That's Jim Nicholson, former resident of Colorado, chairman of the National Republican Committee, and ambassador. He used to come down and give me horseback rides.
That is really cool. That is really cool.
Whew. There you go.
That's neat.
All right. That's always good.
That was really
neat. I mean, when you're a little boy, there's people that, you look up to baseball, football stars. For me, it was him.
Yeah. And I love the fact that it was so close inside of your life. Very rarely do we find someone that is so close that can be such of a North Star inside of our lives. Because normally you have things like people are looking for the athletes, the movie stars, TV stars, film stars, stuff like that. And sometimes those heroes are found better in your neighborhood. Yeah. Sometimes inside your own house, under your own roof. Yeah.
Well, and who gets to grow up next to the ambassador to the Vatican? And
really
I mean, that's pretty rare. And then he invited us out. My mom and I went and spent about a week with him.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
I got to travel around with him, and he just opened up everything to us.
Oh,
I mean, we got
nice.
to go down, see where the bones of Peter are.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
then wander
incredible.
the streets underneath the Vatican, the Basilica.
Oh,
I think
neat.
is the name of it.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, he's always been very good to our family.
St. Peter's Basilica was there.
Yeah, always been very good to our
Yeah.
family, and I apologize for getting a little emotional.
Oh,
but
that's so nice. That's so wonderful.
Yep.
It means a lot to you. I love that.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Just wrapped up a conversation with the former ambassador to the Vatican and some interesting insights that caught my attention, Bill. One was that these cardinals don't really know each other. Did you hear that from him?
Oh, yeah.
Where he said, like, they don't really spend that much time together. So the factions have to develop in person. So it's almost like a show of Survivor.
Yeah, it is.
Where they don't really they all show up, and then all of a sudden you got to start figuring out who you're going to build alliances with.
Yeah, because there's rarely any like global gathering. Sometimes you'll have regional, so there'll be some regional relationships. But yeah,
you don't think there's some Signal chat groups or text chat groups that some of the cardinals are on?
Oh, yeah, I think there are a few. Yeah, I think there are a few because of they see things certain ways, and they've had either past relationships or friends of friends have introduced them. So yeah, I think there's a couple, but you've got like 136 plus, so there are a lot of them. So I don't think there are a lot of personal relationships because again, they're spread out. You don't show up and there's not, in very rare cases, an office full of cardinals. So there's, because they're spread out throughout the world because they have, kind of a regional area. So that's part of the idea that they're separated so much from each other. So yeah, they rarely have a chance to discuss, maybe only prior relationships as they were coming up together, maybe going through church together. But again, you have so many different parts of the world, different seminaries. The idea that someone would be in seminary class or even share a parish would be very unusual to come out and both be cardinals. That would be very unusual.
So the other thing that was interesting to me was yesterday, a lot of our calls were generally pretty favorable of Pope Francis. They didn't really, agree with everything he did. And in fact, I listened to Charlie Kirk and Michael Knowles after the fact. And even then, Michael Knowles was like, well, you really couldn't pin Francis down as a real progressive, because he would kind of say stuff about, who am I to judge? But then he'd come out with an encyclical confirming marriage. And so, Michael Knowles saying, you can't really put him in our conservative liberal categories. And Nicholson coming in just going, nah, he's too progressive.
But that would be his perspective, given age and other things like that. And it was, and the interesting thing that I thought with what Jim was saying was the idea that he didn't like, the woke and the climate change, but was talking about more evangelizing to grow the congregation. And if we had more time, and again, if he was feeling better, some of the question would be, could that be the form of how Francis was looking at being, taking on the idea of evangelizing to the congregation, that if you're going to pull the younger kids in, is he speaking to issues that are important to the younger kids? And what I mean by that is, and again, I'm not saying that Pope Francis was right or wrong in the decision to make this choice, but what I'm asking is, could the choice have been made? I'm going to speak more often into climate change because it matters to those potential newer voters. And I would say that, versus our demographic, Jeff, the kids that are below us, climate change is more important to them. They have more of a focus on it than my generation, your generation had. Not universally, but it seems to be more important to them. So is that part of the evangelization?
I do think, though, as somebody who went through seminary and learned about liberation theology, and when people bring up, and even the New York Times brought this up about Francis, that he was swayed by liberation theology, I'm like, oh, man, that was just an effort to shoehorn the gospel into Marxist thinking. Because I sat there, I remember debating our ethics seminary professor about this, because we had to read, there's books on this called Rich Christians in an Age of Hunger and all this stuff. And this belief here's what liberation theology argues, that the gospel of Jesus Christ isn't purely about saving souls. It's about righting institutional wrongs, one of those wrongs being wealth disparity. And Jim Wallace, Sojourners are big aspects of this. And it's not just the idea of God calling you to give more. It's the idea of, well, if the rich men own all the ponds, for instance, how can the poor be even taught to fish, right? We're not just going to give you a fish. We want to teach you to fish. Well, if the rich men own all the ponds, then we can't even teach people to fish. Ergo, it is upon the gospel of Jesus Christ and the church to confront these systemic economic problems, and eventually you just fall into Marxist communism I mean, that's the end of this. It sounds good initially, but then you're speaking into, wealth confiscation by the government, redistribution of wealth, all that stuff. That's where you eventually land on this. And New York Times pointing out that Francis was sympathetic to liberation theology.
Yeah, and there's part of it in which I do see a thread of that inside of the church. I mean, again, the idea of easier for the camel to go through the eye of the needle, rich person having that type of idea, that the separation of resources is an issue. I can see liberation theology going as far as to get into Marxism, and again, the issue being that as a church or as a community, we can always decide where that necessarily stops as far as that redistribution of wealth. And the example that I would give most practically would be the progressive income tax system here in the U.S. We wouldn't call our progressive income tax system necessarily Marxist or communist, but it is a wealth redistribution system. And we can talk about whether or not that should or should not be done, the idea of the death tax, stuff like that. And so I do believe that, taking anything to the end point can lead you to strange places. But I think there may be some idea inside of, that when the church just says, well, guys, good luck. Hope everything works out some well. If you have some problems, come in here and pray. That may not be necessarily as effective inside of someone's life.
The church's command upon the wealthy is far more demanding than anything that the government can demand of you, which is sell everything and follow Christ, right? You remember the rich young ruler, right? Like that's very serious stuff. That's not just joke around. Oh, Jesus, No. As Christians, you sit there and you go, oh, man, like I've really got to deal with that's the command on my life. And in some cases, yes, you have to be willing to give it all up to follow Christ, okay? Now, is that the same thing as the church going to the guys with the guns and saying, all right, now I'm going to use these guys to force you to give it all up to other people? That's where liberation theology fails theologically, in my mind. And you have to go back to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and Christ and God into render unto Christ what is Christ. So, but it was interesting to me for Nicholson to be kind of going, I wanted to see the next pope get back to the basics, evangelism, a conservative view of marriage or the sanctity of life, that Francis was too squishy, and, he was probably flirted with liberation theology a little too closely.
Yeah, and the question that I kind of have in some of that is, let's look at politically the Colorado GOP. That recently, last couple of years, we went through the GOP candidates are not adhering tightly enough to the GOP principles. They're too squishy. They're too liberal. And if we had more solid, classic conservative candidates, we would then be able to run and win elections. There's some mixed messages on that one. So the idea being that is the conclusion that we want to get back to more of the basics and go back to some of the old school church stuff and the evangelical side of things as well. Is that something that is the desire of that person's heart, or is it something that actually can grow the church? Because I think in some cases we saw here in the Colorado GOP, it was a desire of individuals' hearts for what they wanted to hear, not winning. But in some cases, it did lead to winning. So
and that's a debate within the church now. Is if you moderate some of your stances, will more people come into the church? I think that's played itself out not to work. If you moderate on theological issues, that people are like, you may end up with an initial kind of interest bump, but you want to talk about churches selling out property right now? It's the old waspy denominations, the Episcopalians, the Methodists, the PCUSA, that all liberalized years and years and years ago, decades ago. Now nobody's interested in attending those churches. Meanwhile, churches like Brave with Jeff Schwarzentraub, who broadcasts on our sister station all the time. That guy's about as bold as you can get, and people are including former Hall of Fame quarterbacks are hanging out in his church these days. So, interesting. Where do you want to see the direction of the Catholic Church go? Do you agree with Jim Nicholson? Get back to the basics. Get back to the evangelism. Be clearly conservative with your biblical teachings, and the Catholic Church will grow? Or is it time for the Catholic Church to give up some stuff? Maybe not everything, but maybe some married priests. What do you think? 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. Look, are you ready to transform your kitchen or bathroom into a stunning masterpiece? Look no further than The Art of Granite, your premier destination for exquisite granite, marble, quartz, countertops for over 15 years. Mitch Floria, owner of The Art of Granite, has been crafting and installing custom countertops, fireplaces, showers, and more. Their team of experts will guide you through the selection process, ensuring you find the perfect stone to match your style and budget. Visit their showroom in Golden or browse their online inventory at theartofgranite.com. Discover the endless possibilities for your home renovation project. Listen to this. This is an amazing deal, guys. Mention KNUS and get a free bathroom countertop with new kitchen countertops, or choose a free kitchen or bathroom sink with any countertop package. Don't wait. Transform your home into the oasis you deserve. Schedule your free consultation with Mitch today. Go to theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. Mention KNUS for those exclusive savings and transform your kitchen or bathroom dreams into reality with theartofgranite.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We were just joined by former ambassador to the Vatican. Now, what secrets do you think? We didn't get a chance to ask him that.
Oh, I'm sure there's some.
But,
oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there's some that he knows. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there's some sort of like bookcase that he knows he can pull a book and it opens up and there's like all the treasure.
I'm thinking back to Tom Hanks and, all those secrets.
Oh, yeah.
In those movies.
I'm going through like, Nicolas Cage and National Treasure. So I'm thinking,
yeah.
That's what I'm going. I'm going full Hollywood.
You've been to the Vatican?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So I was torn when I was there because when you convert as an evangelical, you're really tied to the scriptures. And so you in your mind, Jesus is a poor itinerant Jewish preacher.
Yeah.
And he didn't even own a home, right? And then you go to the Vatican, you're like, wow.
Yeah,
like the world's wealth is here. And so you're a little torn on that. But then on the flip side, thank God for all the history they have there. The frescoes, you get to wander the ancient streets of Rome. And it is a gift to the world, what they've been able to.
Oh, yeah, and all the art and sculptures and everything else. Yeah, the fact they've been able to hold on to so much of it. Yeah, it is. It is a real amazing gift to the world. I'm not always happy with what they've done with the wealth, but that's okay. It's.
I'll tell you the other thing that was really cool for me.
Yeah, tell me.
I got to have a private audience with Pope John Paul II.
Oh, wow.
And in a private audience, that means you're in a room with about 500 people.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's not just me and the JP2
no, yeah, not
hanging
at all.
out. But I'll tell you what was so cool. Because when you grow up in America in evangelicalism and you go to church, pretty much everybody looks like you.
Oh, yeah.
They all talk like you.
Yep.
They all live in your neighborhood. And when you go to the Vatican, it is people from Buenos Aires celebrating. It's people from Africa. It's people from Asia, Australia, Europe, all together. And I remember just sitting there going, this is the body of Christ.
Yeah. The one time that my wife and I heard the most diverse languages spoken is when we were in the Vatican. Because when around the rest of, Rome, Florence, everywhere else as you travel in Italy, dominant Italian, you have a few other things in there and a little bit of English. But the vast number of languages being spoken is phenomenal when you're walking around the Vatican. I remember a couple of times just sitting there going, I'm hearing 3, 4, 5 different, just within, 10 feet of me being spoken. It was really cool.
So, should priests get married?
Yeah.
Think so?
Yeah, I do.
No, I'm an evangelical, so I can't speak into church teaching on all this stuff, but it always seemed like a recommendation that Paul would make on this. It comes from 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35, and it's essentially, I want you to be free from the concern of having to raise a family. So if you're going to be a priest, you should probably be unmarried because now you get to devote all of your time and attention to the church and to serving people. Whereas, when you're married, you got lots of other demands on you. So, but it didn't seem like that was an order.
This is the thing, and again, because, my brain's wired a little bit differently than some, the thing that always I didn't understand in that, and this is the one that I, again, had those difficult conversations that I may have been asked to leave the religion class for a little while and come back at the next session, was because I didn't understand why someone that is married could then go through seminary and be a priest. They're married. They didn't have to get divorced. But
so if you do it first.
So I'm kind of like, well, why does it, if it's so important, if it's so vital to the mission of the church, then why don't you force the person to get divorced? They can still raise a family. They can have kids. I didn't understand that. And person teaching religious class said, that's the end of this discussion. Move on to something else. You can sit in the hall. Pretty much what ended that one. Yeah. Yes.
I joke. I'm like, Bill was probably the only person I've ever met that was argued into the kingdom of heaven.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, probably the only one. Yes. The number of problems that I caused for so many teachers. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why that's just so vitally necessary.
But the funny thing is, it's how you connect with an idea.
Yeah.
So most people get offended, right? Like if you question or they get upset.
Yeah.
But for you, it's like how you love a subject.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is by pushing in on it. And when
Yes.
people push back and like, no, Bill, you're wrong. You're actually like, you feel it as an expression of
Oh, yeah.
love.
That's exactly where it is. There's this quote that I love from Doctor Who, and it's like, that looks somewhat unique, different, and dangerous. Let's go poke it with a stick. I'm like, yeah, let's go find out. My question was always, why did that happen? Why is this the thing that we're doing? And over and over and over again. And it's been to a long list of questionable decisions. But I push on the idea that why would this, make sense? Why does this make sense? I don't find any reason why priests can't get married. The other one that'll break everybody's brain, knowing that I am a long-term Roman Catholic, is I don't understand why certain sexual organs are okay to be a priest and certain other ones aren't. And the only reason for that,
given to male, not female.
Yeah, exactly. That I don't understand. And the only reason being, and I understand the teachings inside of the Bible,
I think
and I
the
get
Bible's
that.
clear on that
and
one.
I get that one. The thing for me is that if you don't have enough priests, maybe we don't constrain it to only one part of the population. That's the only thing, is if we're going to say we don't have enough priests, we need more people in the priesthood, we need these churches to grow, you've self-selected to a certain point. And there may be a time to have a conversation or a reflection on that as far as what that could look like and how maybe parts of that can change. And, who
the
knows?
argument being that sisters and nuns have plenty of opportunity to influence.
Oh, yeah.
And they can
Yeah.
do great work. I mean, look at Mother Teresa. She didn't hold a priestly office, yet changed the world in incredible ways. It just has to do with that particular office, per Paul's orders in Scripture, remains to be done for male.
Yeah, and I get it. And the only thing that I would have the discussion on is, and this would be fun, this is where you and I would go around in class for a while, is the idea that at the time, though, what were women allowed to do in the society?
Yeah.
So it would make total sense based on the societal construct.
The lack of education.
That men would only be allowed to. But if it was the case where Jesus arrived today rather than thousands of years ago, would the same rule apply, given our societies are constructed differently? So I'm just curious about how much of that is a societal restriction and how much of that is an ecumenical restriction. I think it's different, and I think there's some conversations that can be had there. And the fun part is I'm not certain that there is a right or a wrong answer, but there is one that is concurrent with the faith and how it's being taught, but how does it grow? But again, that's always a problem in class.
All right.
Over and over again.
Bill, I went to seminary. You challenged questions. It's what we did. We studied this stuff. People are welcome to join the conversation. 303-696-1971. We hosted Jim Nicholson, former ambassador to the Vatican, and he was going, I want to see a return of the church to its fundamental core teachings, evangelism, the basic biblical teachings on marriage, on the sanctity of life, being pulled off into stuff like climate change as a distraction. Get back to the basics. Or would you like to see some changes? This is a moment. This is a turning point for the Roman Catholic Church. Do you want to see it recommitted? Do you want to see some flexibility in areas? Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Someone that I think would do a great job as a pope, but look, I'm not Roman Catholic. Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law, only because he's given 40 years of service to people, helping them get justice in injury cases. But more than just being a great guy with decades and decades of experience, Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted that he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, here's his phone number, 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S Law.com. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You're waking up in the greatest country in history. Let's get after it. We got an entire hour planned for you of engaging conversations, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. Phone lines are open. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Bill, let's go to the phone lines before we get to Blake Olson. We've been talking the changes that could be taking place at the Vatican, because this is a turning point. Jim Nicholson, former ambassador to the Vatican, joined us in the last hour saying, I wanted to turn back to its basics, get more conservative, focus in on evangelism and traditional definitions of marriage and life, and don't be running out there covering liberation theology and climate change and stuff like that. Let's go to the phone lines. Steve in Denver. Good morning, Steve. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, yeah, I've been listening to this for a couple days, listening to Hugh and different versions of, what does a pope mean and where does his authority come from? And I was raised a Catholic and went to Catholic elementary school and attended church with my parents and didn't ask many questions, but when I did start to ask them, I was immediately silenced by the priests and nuns because they didn't have the answers, and one of them is why are only men allowed to be priests? And that was met with immediate kneel time in the corner, where you were made to put your nose against the wall and kneel down and don't ask those kind of questions. It wasn't my place to ask, even as a young boy. And the priest that implemented those punishments turns out to be also one of the priests that did the most vile acts to young people in the Catholic Church. His name was St. Peter. What a travesty to name him after such a great apostle.
Yeah.
But luckily, I won my mother's permission to leave that school and go to Byers Elementary, where the 60s were happening and the 70s were right on top of it, and partying and drugs and freedom and all those things looked pretty good to me. And so my interest in the Catholic Church wandered away, and I went other directions, and spirituality and soul searching, I think. And it wasn't until I met my wife in 1987, and she was a Lutheran, that she said, well, I'd like you to come to a Lutheran church. And I just didn't know anything about it. So I left the idea of Catholicism behind long before. And so I went to St. John's Lutheran Church in Washington Park and met a wonderful pastor, Miles, and he had been appointed by Jimmy Carter at one point when his life was in the secular world, and he introduced me to Jesus Christ. And I would like to have thought I knew who that was when I was a Catholic, but I did not. What I knew was the Catholic rules. I knew the law, because you have to do a lot of different procedures to get to Christ. And when he said, do you accept Christ in your life? I said, well, yeah, sure, I'm a Catholic. He said, that's not what I asked. And we began to study, and I learned that really the only entrance is to accept Christ as your Lord and Savior. And you are then saved. And there are not all these laws that you need to go into in order to, go and be prayed over, or you have to pray this many Our Fathers or this many Hail Marys in order to be absolved of your sins. You have to admit your sins to God and Christ and repent. And when you do, God is a forgiving, loving God, and He, in fact, does forgive and does bring you into His heart and you into His. And that's what I found and discovered. And through that, I read a great book that I'll share with you by Eric Metaxas called Martin Luther. And I advise every Catholic to read this book because you'll understand.
It's a long one.
Yeah, it is a long book, but it tells such a great story. You have to, if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I just never understood the dynamics of how the popes came to be and who's in power and what they did to keep anybody from asking those questions and questioning their authority. And even when you stand, I've been to the Vatican. My wife, oddly enough, took me there. Even though we weren't Catholics any longer, she was never a Catholic, and stood there and looked up at where the Pope would deliver his sermon from, and he's 100 feet in the air and looking down on the people on their knees, and that was the position of the Pope. So there's so many things that I think the Pope could do. I think his spirituality is not to be questioned. I don't question that. I believe he is a spiritual authority from God. But does he? How does he rule as a leader? He says a man with great power should be humble. Well, so should a priest or.
Well, I think we lost Steve there. Steve, you pretty much everything you cover is essentially what the Reformation was all about. So getting back to the basics of faith, how you're justified by your faith, not by your works, and then a rejection of the systems that were set up for penance and paying for your loved ones that had already passed on to get out of purgatory and all that. That was a pushback that came from the Protestants. And so a lot of what you describe is what the Reformation was all about. Appreciate the call. We're discussing what would you like to see if there was changes made to the Catholic Church right now, either to the right, to the left, more conservative, more liberal. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971. I think getting back to the basics is always good, no matter what denomination you're in. Faith, you're justified by your faith, and it's a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Great call, Steve. Thanks. Now is time for news with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
.54 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 72 today on Earth Day. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, rumors of a visit by personnel from DOJ prompted people to freak out in Boulder on Monday. Colorado Congressman Joe Neguse met with protesters at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration facility after false reports DOJ officials were there.
I love the fact
we're rightfully concerned, and the community is rightfully concerned about what may be happening at NOAA and at NIST. We know that NOAA, NIST, and our federal labs remain targets.
Sorry, Jeff, I couldn't stop it. Go ahead.
No. I apologize. So the perspective is so great here, right? And I've run into this down at the Colorado State Capitol, and you remember the lady with the beehive cover?
Yes.
I mean, this
Maskey.
They believe their jobs are so important.
Yeah.
That how dare anybody challenge the importance of their jobs. And then the idea that President Trump, who's duly elected by the people, by the way, could fire them?
No.
What?
You can't fire me. I'm a government employee.
I feel like that should be my ringtone. Blake, I'm going to clip that, and every time you call me, it's going to say, "You can't fire me. I'm a government employee." Look, I understand they do important work. I think
some do.
Some do.
Yeah,
right?
well, most of them probably do.
But that comes with the territory.
Yeah.
We all work in radio in an industry where we could be off tomorrow.
Well, you got that right.
And you just got to deal with it. So I'm sorry, you can't be in such a position where you're offended by the idea that maybe somebody wants to see if your job's that important to the point where a taxpayer's hard-earned dollars have to pay for it.
That's right. I agree with that. That's why we have elections. The voters spoke, and they said they want to cut this stuff. And part of it is waste. Some of it is fraud. And some of them are jobs that we don't feel like we have to have. And
I just love the fact that Joe Neguse is there.
I know.
Running down. I'm here for you guys.
Yes. Just listen to the tone of his voice real quick. This is what drives me crazy.
You were rightfully concerned, and the community is rightfully concerned about what may be happening at NOAA and at NIST. We know that NOAA, NIST, and our federal labs remain targets.
They're targets. They're, the clenched fists, and here we go, and they're coming after us. I hate the tone of voice on stuff like this. Drives me nuts. All right, 47 announced Monday that he and First Lady Melania will attend the funeral of Pope Francis this Saturday. One of Jeff's heroes growing up, Secretary Jim Nicholson, former ambassador to the Vatican, on the show last hour. And although he respects the Pope and respected him, he'd like to see a different direction taken by the church.
Well, I think this Pope, God bless him, I think he's been progressive in ways, possessed with wokeism, and I'd like to see a Pope bring the leadership of the church back to a more conventional, conservative point of view, and I'd like to see a leader who is not as confused or confusing as Pope Francis.
Amen. The public will be able to start paying their respects tomorrow at St. Peter's Basilica. A lot of Catholics say they need Bishop Schneider, who knows all about Islam and is trying, it says they're trying to destroy Christianity in the West, and the globalist left has allowed it to happen.
This is very serious. Now we're witnessing an invasion. They are not refugees. No, this is an invasion of mass Islamization of Europe, which already went on for at minimum 50, 60 years.
He would be a great leader, no doubt. DJT and Pete Hegseth are crushing it when it comes to military recruitment, but the lefty establishment and a few on the right who love war and trying to destroy the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and DJT just continue to build upon this story. But he said this morning he's not playing those games with the media.
What was shared over Signal, then and now, however you characterize it, was informal, unclassified coordinations for media coordination and other things. That's what I've said from the beginning. At the beginning, it was left-wing reporters from The Atlantic who got a hold of it and then wanted to create a problem for the president. This is what it's all about, trying to get at President Trump and his agenda.
White House correspondent Jon Decker was on with Jeff and Billy this morning, also talking Hegseth and the president.
Sounded like he's backing his Secretary of Defense, and I think that as it relates to the story that has caused all of this hubbub as it relates to his job, I think the story being out there, unless there's another shoe to drop, the story's going away by the end of this week.
Agree. 4 Democratic reps went to visit your friendly neighbor, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, in El Salvador. What happened?
The government here in El Salvador turned down the request that came through the embassy. So the embassy made the request for us to be able to see Mr. Garcia, and that was rejected.
Get that big stuff out of here!
They just think they can show up.
Yes, they get on the plane.
Yeah.
They have their refreshments and their peanuts, and they fly down there, get a little palm trees and
I'm a
beach
member
action.
of Congress.
Yes, how dare you? Oh, I love
I
it.
demand to see the El Salvadorian illegal immigrant that's now in El Salvador. Wait, is there an American citizen here? No.
No.
Why?
Right. You coming to see one of us?
I'm just going to just drop into North Korea. I am a U.S. citizen. I demand to see other North Koreans.
Absolutely. I mean, they're going to die on this hill, man.
They are.
Keep on keeping on.
Yes.
Keep it up. I love it.
But this is par for the course with progressives, though. They always take like a criminal and try to make him look like Mother Teresa.
Yes. It's amazing.
Meanwhile, if you're the actual victim of a crime, like that lady in Maryland was that was out running and got assaulted and murdered, they don't meet with them.
No. I mean,
Their family.
it's no time for them. No time for Americans. Time for illegals. That's who they care about. That's who they love. They do not care about you. How long have we been preaching this? I've been preaching it for 25 years to people I know, but who knows? All right, the fun stuff.
3-point game. Here come the Nuggets.
Think about taking a foul here.
Brown passes up a three. Now he fires. Missed it badly. Jokic with a rebound. Clock ticks to 2. Jokic, no. And that is it.
Clippers tied the series at 1 apiece last night. Heads to Los Angeles now. Nuggets and the Clippers in this first round. And then on the ice last night, the Stars and the Avalanche in North Texas.
Going at Johnson. Blackwell into the slot, shoots. Save made through traffic by Blackwood. Blackwell scores! It's over! This series is tied!
Blackwell scores on Blackwood and the Avalanche go down. That series is also tied at 1 apiece and comes back to Colorado Wednesday night. Game 3 tomorrow night for the Avalanche as they try to take a 2-1 lead. 53 in Thornton and 52 in Lakewood, 54 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue Tuesday morning. Blake Olson News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your KNUS forecast for the Denver metro area calls for a very pleasant Tuesday. We'll be looking at temperatures today and again tomorrow, and also for your Thursday running a little above average. We'll see temperatures lower to maybe a mid-70 for highs. Some morning sunshine, little building afternoon cloud cover. A couple of showers and storms not out of the question today. A better chance of some showers and a few spring thunderstorms Wednesday and Thursday. Lows tonight and the next few nights, low to mid-40s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Music.
Yeah, no music. I don't know what music
Music
is.
as we get
No idea.
started on the Jeff
Yes.
and Bill show. Bill, I've got some great news.
Yeah, what?
Democrats at the state capitol are going after fees.
Fees? Like wanting more of them?
They've actually signed a law prohibiting fees. Oh, wait. Only those collected by corporations.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just the corporations. Okay.
Of course, that's who they're going after.
So that means my concert tickets are going to be better and less expensive.
Well, at least when it comes to your apartment living,
Okay.
Colorado landlords, the Denver Post reporting, will soon be prohibited from charging fees for pest control and common maintenance under new pricing transparency laws signed into law Monday by Governor Jared Polis. The new law, which passed the legislature, House Bill 1090, bans several fees common in rental housing. It also generally requires companies to show the total price of the product or service they're selling. This includes price of the product and any mandatory charges and fees included. The total price must also be shown as one complete number in company advertisements.
This is wrong. Well, they're wrong about this, and this is why. Because we still don't do that. Because you're still going to walk into the store today, and even next week, after the law has been implemented, months down the road, and you're still going to have to figure out what the hell tax is. Yeah, that's the thing is, I would be happier about this if it was just finally put the tax in the stinking price. Figure it out that way so I don't have to be doing math.
That would be it, but this doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't at all, and that's why I'm mad about this one.
Yeah.
That's why I'm mad about this, because they didn't fix the thing that's really pissing me off. But okay, go
right, I know. And Bill, this is where I go, huh.
Yeah.
Huh. The Democrats at the state capitol have passed a law because they believe that charging people hidden fees is not right. So they're going to go after the corporations that charge these fees. Huh. Now, guys, can we do the same thing with the government that's charging stupid fees on everything? Have you gotten your vehicle registration form yet?
Yes.
Or you had to pay that thing?
Yeah. Yeah, there are
And
lots
the
of
30 or
there.
so random fees associated with that?
Yeah, there are a lot of those fees. It's kind of silly.
It's like the clerk hair care fee?
Well, it's basically they've learned from the ticket concert people. Said, there's a shipping and handling fee. There's a using our website fee. There's a because we don't like you fee. All those fees they've tacked on at the end. Yes.
Listen
All
to
of
this. I went back to our friends at the Common Sense Institute. Best research taking place in Colorado,
hands
bar
down.
none. The first year of the following the passage of Tabor, fee-based enterprises in Colorado generated $742 million.
Okay.
Wow. By 2023, their revenue had increased by over 3,000%.
Wow.
Far beyond population growth, which was 62%, resulting in $23.3 billion in fees.
Wow. That's a lot. And I know the study you're talking about, and the issue being that the percentage of state spending that we derive from fees is astronomical.
Yes.
In fact, let's just do a little game right now with our audience. So, for listeners, if you had to guess how much of our state budget by percentages that we derive in fees. So what that means is we have a pie, basic circle pie thing. And if we had to draw the lines on there, where do we draw the line showing the portion of the Colorado state budget that comes out of your taxes? And then how big is the other side of that pie that shows what percentage of the Colorado state budget comes out of fees? How would you, listening to the Jeff and Bill show, draw those lines? What side would have the bigger part of the pie? Well, maybe by my question, you can guess that I'm assuming most of us would draw the taxes being the larger portion of the pie, probably significantly larger portion of the pie. However, that's not actually how it works. According to the Common Sense Institute in 2023, 71% of state spending were from fees. Fees.
Mounting to $8,442 per Coloradan.
Yeah. Great. Good job there. Yeah.
So help me help you.
Yeah. And so that's the idea.
Mr. Lawmaker, who just rammed through a bill and said, look at me. I am going to take on those terrible fees you are forced to pay by your apartment landlords. Meanwhile, send me all your fees.
Yeah. Now remember that we go back to 1996 with Tabor.
Fees. I'm bathing in fees.
At that point, 46% of our state spending was derived from fees and taxes. So from 1996 to 2023, we've gone from 46% in fees to 71% in fees. Now let's review. This is the same state legislature that is having to cut programs right now because they don't have enough money for it. And the same state legislature that says they're not getting enough of your tax dollars and need to take away Tabor. I'm sorry. You're only using Tabor, tax money for 30% of your budget. A little bit more than that. That's it. That's all you're using it for. And somehow that's where you're not finding enough revenue. When you have 70% of our state budget derived from fees. Stop moaning and complaining about Tabor. Yeah, that's ridiculous. It is already a minority of the state funding. So understand that when you get the Democrats standing there in front of the cameras crying their giant crocodile tears about how Colorado doesn't have enough money because of Tabor, Tabor's not even half the state revenue. It's barely a quarter of the revenue.
A quarter.
Yeah. Barely a quarter of the revenue comes from Tabor. And so those Democrat legislators that are crying and moaning about the handcuffs to the state budget that are put on them because of Tabor, over 70% of our state funding is Tabor exempt. They've already worked around it. They just want to get their hands on that last little bit of the money. So when they complain about Tabor, they're full of it because they've already figured out the workaround. They already derive 70% plus of our state revenue from fees that are not subject to Tabor. So stop with the crocodile tears. Stop complaining about Tabor. It's not the problem.
This law goes into effect January 1st, Denver Post reports. It comes amid broader scrutiny of so-called junk fees. At the state and federal level, lawsuits have been filed against large landlords in Colorado for allegedly misleading their tenants about their unit costs. Federal regulators previously took aim at hidden fees in other industries, but an official from the Federal Trade Commission wrote in a January letter to Jared Polis and Colorado lawmakers urging them to adopt a law targeting fees in the housing sector. Look, Bill, I'm not opposed to them going after these fees. No. I think it's terrible when corporations hide their costs and then all of a sudden you buy something and, oh, you got to pay this, and oh, you got to pay this, and now you owe this, and owe this. Okay, I get it. I don't like it either. Congratulations, lawmakers, for taking it on. What I don't understand is the mental breakdown that takes place when they're listening to their constituents go, we don't like fees. Yeah. And they're like, I understand. Let's go after those terrible corporations. And then they load on fees over and over and over again upon their own constituents to the point where, the average Colorado's paying $8,000 in fees right now?
Yeah, and a reminder, we don't get to vote on the fees. That's nothing that we get to.
Exactly. Great point.
They have figured the workaround. They know that coming to us and saying, can we please have more of your money, doesn't work out so well. So if they tag them on as fees, there's nothing that you and I can do. And they've done that over and over again to where 70% of our budget plus is derived from those fees. That's ridiculous. My lovely and talented wife just this past weekend argued with a company that on our bill, we're running a little bit of a credit line with them, on our bill, one of the fees rolled in was a marketing and promotional fee. They were charging us to pay for their advertising. We called them and said, that's not part of our agreement when we took out the money with you. Yeah. This is a line of credit that, that we can use. It's not credit card or anything else. It's with one specific shop that we can go in there and you've got a couple of $1,000s for unintended consequences of things that can happen. It's basically an auto parts store place. And that's basically it. So we needed some stuff, but they charged us an extra fee for their promotion and marketing. That's not the agreement. So yes, that fee was taken off, but how many other people just saw that and didn't even pay attention to the bill? And that's what Colorado was doing for us. That's what they're doing. They figured out you and I don't have to vote for the fees, so everything becomes a fee. If you want to change this tomorrow, you run a Tabor, but you make it fees. Make it fee-based, that we all have to vote on them, and this stops. But, I don't know.
They're starting to. Unfortunately, there was a proposition that passed a few years ago that said if it reaches a certain threshold in the amount of fees it covers, it's now got to go before Tabor. So,
and obviously that threshold's not 71.
Passage, Proposition 117.
What it gets to 125%.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, more than all of them. Yes.
So, it is. But for me, it's just the disconnect of lawmakers going, we're going after those guys, those evil guys charging you all their fees. Can't even look in the dang mirror.
Yeah.
All right, you're welcome to join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. If there's anything Bill and I agree on, it's the when you get lawmakers taking advantage of people, whoo, boy, you'll get us both zeroed in on you. Great use of your money, by the way. Not with fees, but if you need to protect the things you love, especially your business, that's alarm detection systems. Reliability isn't optional when business security is on the line. It's essential. Businesses trust alarm detection systems for the highest level of service and expertise. Think about the time you could be saving using one source for cameras, key card access, fire and intrusion systems. ADS offers expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians, 24/7 professional monitoring, same-day or next-day service upon request because downtime isn't an option. Dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms, and over 300 security professionals all working for you. Choosing ADS means your business stays protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. They combine human monitoring with the latest AI camera technology to prevent crime in real time. Trusted by large and small businesses, including many Colorado schools, their security experts will review your system for free. Go to adsalarm.com and schedule your review today. That's adsalarm.com. Alarm detection systems, the first choice of Front Range and Colorado businesses. adsalarm.com. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Text messages pouring in on this one, 6728, saying they all want to jump up and down and say, look at them going after those evil landlords.
Yes.
But yet they don't even look at their own car registration and realize that they pay more in fees than they do the actual registration of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get hit with state bridge fees and county bridge fees. Shouldn't the state cover the county? But I digress. I guess it's the old adage, my enemy and my enemy and my enemy and my enemy. But the point being, these lawmakers are very proud to stand on a platform and point at all the evil fees being generated on you by those corporations. Meanwhile, the amount of fees they're collecting dwarfs anything that those corporations are collecting.
You know, that's a really, really interesting perspective. I like the fact that you just brought that up, because imagine this in your life. If you went down to register your car, or maybe you are paying your internet or a cable bill, maybe it's your insurance bill, maybe it's just going down and going to the grocery store. Imagine if you looked at your receipt at the end of any of those transactions and you figured out that 71% of what you paid were fees, not always necessarily related to the item or product or service you were purchasing in the first place, but they were additional add-ons for extras. What would you think if you went and you had to pay your cable bill, your internet bill, your car insurance bill? 70% of it was taken up with extra added-on fees, not always necessarily connected to what you were getting, not connected to your internet service, not connected to, all the cable that you watched over the course of the month, not connected to the insurance for your car. Yeah, you've got comprehensive, you have collision, you have the other stuff, but now an extra 70% added in fees. None of us would stand for that. But because we have no other options, really, as far as our state government, that is how they roll. 70% of our budget is generated through fees. So a reminder, as we talked about in the first segment, every time you hear these Democrat lawmakers crying over Tabor, it's a minority of how they derive their income for the state. They need to shut up about it, because the real money is found inside of those fees. When you have 30% or less of our state budget being generated through Tabor, the idea of our taxes, and they complain that they're not getting enough money from that, no. You guys have found how to generate more than enough money. When you generate 70% of our state budget through fees, you're not concerned about Tabor at all.
Which fee drives you the most nuts? Is it the bag fee? Is it the stupid Amazon delivery fee that you have to pay all the time?
I don't know. See, the thing for me, the bag fee doesn't bother me because I just bring my own bags. I've got no problem with that. And the thing is, I for years, I carried a backpack or other stuff, and so I never did. So that was it. I always talk about, wearing hoodies. I'd kangaroo pouch it. Just shove the stuff in the kangaroo pouch. So that one doesn't bother me as much.
And then run.
That was when I was younger, because I could run faster. Now, not so much. Now I'm shuffling slowly away from people while they yell at me. Sir, come back here. Yes.
Yeah, we'll call the police. They'll get here in time before he gets to the car.
And this is the weird part and this is why I am a good example of someone in some cases that hasn't been paying attention. I'm not sure what fee that would be, because again, I don't pay as much attention to that as I should, because until this morning, I had no idea that 70% of our state budget was derived from fees. Now I'm going to start paying more attention because of it. I thought it was like a 50-50 at this point.
It always drives me nuts, the car registration one, because it is so long.
That's a good point.
And the amount of fees that are there,
that's a really good point.
You literally, not literally, but you have like the hair care service fee for the clerk.
Yep.
Where you're just going, what? There's no... And then the cell phone bill's got all the fees.
Yes, the cell phone bill's awful.
Every time you order something on Amazon, you get stuck with that stupid state payment delivery fee. And then the bag one, I will, in principle, Bill...
Yeah.
Allow my groceries to roll all over the back of my car rather than pay the stupid 10-cent fee.
Oh, see, I get that too.
As a result, because I don't carry bags, I'm not a responsible person. My wife does carry the bags in the back of her car. So I end up loading all the groceries into my car or into my cart, take them to the stupid self-out register, take them all out one by one, put them all back in one by one, put them all back into my car one by one, and then unload them one by one onto the counter, and then eventually put them away.
See,
all out of spite.
What would make me mad is having to go back and forth from the car to the kitchen countertop. That's enough of a pain point for me. That's why I've got several bags in the back end of the car. But that's the only reason for that. I am going to have to start paying attention to some of these fees because it is rather annoying. And again, the bag fee doesn't necessarily bother me because it's singular. If the bag fee was one of 7 or 8 fees I'm paying at the end of my grocery store bill, then I've got more of an issue. That's why I side with you on the idea of the motor vehicle registration, because there's a long list of fees that we pay that are far beyond. And again, this is why it ticks me off that we don't include tax in our prices. Because any time you go in, you're like, oh, motor vehicle registration is this. Wait, the number here on my little bingo card isn't the same thing as the number they're asking me to pay at the end, because when the card arrives in the mail, they don't include those numbers. So when they tell you your car registration is X, you get to the end of the checkout and it's Y, and that's crap.
No.
It's such a scam.
So, Democrat lawmakers, thank you for taking on the stupid fees that end up in apartment corporations. Good job. Please take a look in a mirror and just do this yourself with your government
and stop
stuff.
complaining about Tabor.
Yeah, it's a great point,
now.
Bill. Well, where you could use your money for a good return is our friends with Advanced Hair Restoration. For many of us, it's happening. Your hair's thinning, your crown's disappearing. Maybe hair loss has you feeling your identity's lost altogether. Well, I've got good news for you. It's an incredible yet simple one-day treatment that starts growing your own natural hair the very next day. And it's guaranteed to grow for life. It's the Advanced FUE from Advanced Hair. Look, we've all seen the pills and lotions that come with monthly subscriptions. They help retain what you have, but what if what you want is your own natural hair permanently in specific areas? From Advanced Hair's state-of-the-art facilities to the world-class Dr. Tanya Pauls, it's not maybe your hair will regrow. It's guaranteed that your new hair will grow. You decide how much, how thick, and where. That's why Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver. For your free consultation, $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Call 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. All right, phone lines. Start filling up. Text messages coming in. We'll get to those. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
been an absolutely fantastic show today. Former ambassador to the Holy See, Jim Nicholson, joined us saying Pope Francis was too woke. Calls for the next pope to return to conservative teachings. Plus, Democrats are banning fees, but only the corporate ones, while levying record government fees upon you. So if you missed any of our discussion, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. We also were joined by Natalie Chuck from Denver7 Investigative Reporting. She discovered that there's law that was passed in 2024 basically allows a guy, and this actually took place in Jefferson County, to ram his car in, create an explosion, kill people, and he gets to walk free because he has a traumatic brain injury.
But the important part on that one is
from
the accident. The injury was caused by the accident. So understand, this guy
alcohol and marijuana caused the accident.
Yep. So he's the cause of the accident. His decision-making process got him into a situation where he caused an accident that resulted in the death of 2 people. During the accident, he suffers a traumatic brain injury, but it's because of that traumatic brain injury suffered during the accident that he's not held responsible for the decisions that he made prior to the brain injury.
Because they don't want him to go to jail.
Yeah.
They feel bad that he's in jail. Yeah. And so they'd written this law going, we're going to send these people not to jail, but to a mental health hospital. Well, when there's no beds for the mental health hospital, because we don't have enough money there, they get to go free.
They just, And the weird part is that when they were crafting this law, there wasn't any, if there's no beds, there wasn't any follow-up service.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of, oh, sorry, no room at the inn. You just go on with your life, and there's no consequences.
Yeah, Bill, what crime do you want to go commit today?
Exactly.
That we can just walk
there are a lot of people that think I have brain damage already.
Murder allows you to get off. Oh, Bill. That is quite some brain damage.
Yes, there is.
From all that soccer.
Yes, there is. It is, yes. Yeah, we used to, one time, we got a couple of seconds here. There was a game, and looking back, you're like, oh, I can't believe we did this. There was a coach that, in order for us to not run laps or do wind sprints and things at the end of practice, would take the ball and kick the ball up as high as he could in the air. And if any one of us could either, and you'd call it out, either trap the ball or head the ball, then we wouldn't have to do some of the wind sprints as a team. Yeah, I wasn't always the best at trapping, but I could take that head anytime. I was really good at it and rather stupid for doing that sometimes. But yeah.
We also talked about Pete Hegseth and whether or not he's going to be sticking around. And is this quite the scandal necessary to remove him? That was covered in the 6 o'clock hour. So all of that at 710knus.com. You can download the podcast there. Tomorrow we actually have a progressive that's going to come into studio and hang out with us.
Yes, progressive Democrat in studio thinking Bernie's the future of the party. This will be interesting.
No more old, pale, stale white dudes. All right, you're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
KNUS.